if you accept that the emotions we feel and all of the things that drive us are powers above us, then it was clear the whole time that Kuja has had something over him that was driving him this whole time. So
Necron was present in the entire game.
Yes,
in
the form of
Vivi's fears, in Zidana's fears,
in the other Black Mage's fears,
It was there in Kuja's fears. Necron was always there. It was just this terrible, terrible fear, and it became embodied. Welcome back to the State of the Arc podcast. My name is Mike.
My name's Kason.
Today we are finishing our story coverage of Final Fantasy IX.
Yeah.
We are going to be covering all of Disc 4 today, but it will not be the end of this podcast series. We will have one more episode next week with a panel of guests to discuss some more things. On that note, if there is anything that you wish we had discussed, particularly if you're a patron, like reach out to us, anything that you wish we had discussed throughout this series that you felt we didn't get into, let us know in the comments. These are the types of things we will bring up next week and try to make sure we thoroughly cover everything you guys are interested in us talking about. We will also be sending out for some of the patrons, not at every level, but for some, the ability to write in some questions for us.
Oh, cool. Good. That'll be good. That'll be good.
So yeah, we'll answer some of those questions, and so look out for that. Notifications will be going up here pretty soon.
Yeah, there have been a lot of really good comments.
Yeah.
In fact, one of them, I'll just highlight it real quick. One person just commented, "Look into the etymology of the word Kuja."
Yes, I saw
that. I
that.
was like, okay, the etymology is my thing. I'm like words and whatever. So Kuja is it goes back to the Hindu, Indian, and it is essentially the name for Mars or Ares, which is the Greek Ares, which is the god of war, and is associated with the color red, and all of that kind of stuff. Very interesting. Also, it's this rage-filled red god, basically, and that is Kuja. And I didn't realize that. It's sometimes the short names, it's like 4 letters. I'm just like, I don't know. I don't even really look it up because I'm just like, it's just so simple. Yeah. I assume that it's probably not.
Also, if it has etymology within a language you've studied before or not.
Which Hindu is not something that I am, or Sanskrit. I think it was in particular Sanskrit, but it's something I've not studied much.
Right.
Other than Sanskrit is very similar to Greek in a lot of ways, which is kind of cool.
So you guys have a lot of cool insights like that and additional questions. Send those in. Let's talk about them next time. Now, this is also time, we're getting down to it, time to decide on what the next game we cover is going to be. Right. If you would like to vote on that, please check out our Patreon page. If this is a podcast that you appreciate, you like the conversations we're having, all we ask is that you please help us continue to make this show possible. So go check it out. At the $5 level or above, you can vote on the next game we cover. It is a really, really close race right now between Xenoblade Chronicles and Expedition 33. So those are kind of the two that are looking like are going to be at the top, though there is, of course, Metal Gear Solid 3, which a remake of that just came out. And the other game is escaping me. I can't remember what it was. Doesn't matter. It's not going to win. Anyway, you can go vote there.
Final Fantasy 12.
Final Fantasy 12, that was one.
Yeah.
I do want to cover that game. I like that game a lot. I didn't forget it because I don't like the game. I like the game quite a lot. Yeah. So we will talk about that someday. Okay. Now.
Wait. A game we will talk about someday? Like a place we will return to?
A place to return to someday.
I might cut that.
It was shaky, but it was close.
5 out of 10.
All right. So here's the thing about Disc 4. The story is basically go to the Epha tree and begin the final dungeon.
Right.
There's not a lot as far as main story goes that is kind of covered or that there is here on Disc 4. There is quite a lot of side content and things like that that you can wrap up. I want to talk a little bit about some of those things. But for the most part, it's go to the Epha tree and start the final dungeon. So do you have any notes before that?
No,
that you wanna
because
go?
it's really stuff that we've covered before. Actually, I do have the one thing to say that is, as it pertains to the Black Mage Village. We did mention at the end of last episode that all of the genomes have kind of gone there to live.
Yeah.
And I did have a few notes about just that process there because I find it interesting.
Yeah.
First off, the Black Mages, with their very limited life, were like they were okay with, because they were kind of afraid of foreigners, you know? They were afraid of Quina in particular, and also Zidane, and even Vivi. They were like, we don't talk with foreigners much. We don't want them to know where we live. We want to be isolated. It seems that is changing, that now they are open to these genomes coming down because the genomes are a very similar situation to them. But as we see a few like vignettes of how the genomes interact with the Black Mages, I did find it interesting. You've got the water at Branbal was always still.
Yes.
But in the Black Mage Village, it's running as a river, right? And I didn't really notice that in Branbal. But when they bring it up, I'm like, oh, great. They also equate it with time. Like, time also doesn't flow in Branbal. But here, time is a constant flow. So to say that, like, Terra has been doing this for billions of years, well, time is different for them.
Yeah.
It's just different. And it doesn't exactly flow the way it does for us.
Yep, that was cool.
And then they also showed the name. I thought this was funny. Bobby Corwin.
Yeah.
The chocobo.
So here's an interesting thing. So Boko was the name of the chocobo in Final Fantasy V. It was Bartz's chocobo.
That's my
And so
butts.
Bobby Corwin is sort of like a longer
Boko.
kind of take on Boko.
I had heard that, but I have not played 5. So yeah, I like that.
We will be playing that in the future as well.
I thought that was super funny.
So that was kind of cool.
And then, there's just the very last thing I have before we go to the Epha tree is that Garnet doesn't want to tell Cid about what they're doing because she's like,
I found that strange.
It's strange, but
It works thematically.
she thinks, well, we have a Star Wars Episode 9 situation that happens at the Epha tree, basically, where it's like, oh, uncalled for, all the help just shows up, and it's perfect. I like it a lot better in FF9 than I did in Star Wars Episode 9, even though, they both share the 9 number. I don't know. Maybe there's something there. Just joking. There's nothing there. But Garnet does say, I don't want to tell Cid because he'll want to come with us and help us. And what he needs to do is protect the people of Lindblom. I think Garnet, she's almost like hedging her bets a little bit in case they fail, is what it sounds like. Where it's like, look, Lindblom is an important place. If everything doesn't work, and of course what we find out later is that, well, that was never an option. But at the time, at least it seems like, hey, maybe at least one of these cities could be saved from Kuja, even if we fail.
Yeah.
Maybe something like that.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good thing that Cid ends up showing up.
Yeah, she also talks about not wanting to cause a panic.
Yeah, that's true.
Especially since they just came from a world that was completely destroyed. So that's the situation we're in. The entire world might be obliterated here. Let's not just go announce that to the populace. It might be a bad idea. We think that, our best chance is just a small group going and confronting Kuja.
And I like it, even though it turned out not to be correct, and that it was good that everyone showed up because what we're dealing with is the literal end of the world. There's no way that Lindblom could have survived on its own if they had good guards and protection and shields. It just wasn't going to happen. But I don't know. It's interesting that Garnet kind of is, at the very least, she's making an executive decision as a queen, right? She isn't yet. I think she hasn't been crowned yet.
Yeah.
But she is the queen. What would you say? The queen elect. Does that work?
Yeah,
the queen
I think
to be
the
queen in waiting
before the attack on
it was
Alexandria,
like the day before she was going to be queen.
It was like supposed to happen either on that day or the day after.
And then she ends up saying, before I become queen, I need to figure out myself first, and she leaves, which may not always 99% of the time be the best thing for a queen to do. But in this case, it works out, so everything's fine. Yeah. But she's making an executive decision, like we're going to at least try to protect what we can while we go and do what we can. So now we go to the Epha tree, and as it turns out, Kuja opens up like a massive wormhole that has a billion monsters. Basically, the lunar cry happens. And like a bajillion monsters show up,
silver
and it's
dragons, the ones that the one he rode on.
Yeah, which is like one of those is a really handful.
Powerful. Yeah,
we've got like thousands of them now, and so immediately it's like, oh great, we should have maybe talked to Lindblom or whatnot. But they showed up, and I believe it's because of Baku. And this is what Zidane
Baku
says.
loves showdowns.
Yes, he loves showdowns. So they knew it was going to be at the Epha tree. I could just imagine Baku convincing Sid, just like barging in, going, "Bwah ha ha ha! A showdown's happening. You with me or not?" You know.
Yeah.
And then just the whole fleet shows up. And at first, I was kind of laughing because I was like, Sid is the greatest airship maker in the world. In like days, he has churned out an army of airships. However, Mist has returned back to the continent. And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, oh, this is their original fleet that was out of commission because there was no Mist. Now that the Mist is back, boom, they've got hundreds of ships probably just sitting there waiting to be used. So it makes a little more sense. But my initial thought was, because he made the Hildegard 3 so quickly
really fast,
that I just assumed, like, man, he's just out there hammering away all the time, just making ship after ship after ship. But they all show up along with Beatrix.
Mm-hmm.
And she shows up, partly because she likes Steiner a lot.
Yep.
But she wants to make sure he's safe. But she shows up with Alexander's forces. And so you got a whole bunch of... it's really cool the way that they just kind of blow up all the dragons and stuff. But yeah, they show up to help out. And Star Wars Episode 9, it's they outdid it. 20 years before, they outdid it.
Yeah, it's a good scene. And I mean, just cinematically, too, it's a really cool kind of battle scene with these dragons and ships flying. It's exciting.
Looks really cool.
Gives an opportunity for the party to go through the portal into Memoria and begin the final dungeon. Now, there were a couple things I wanted to touch on before then. So if you go back to the Black Mage Village after having left it during all those scenes where you just explained, the time flows differently, Bobby Corwin, like all that. You go back, you can find a scene with Mikoto, which is the genome girl that we talked to, who kind of led us through Brandball, that Zidane went back for before the planet was destroyed and brought with him. Right?
Yeah, he calls her his sister.
Yeah, he considers her like a little sister, right?
Yeah. And she's offended at that.
Yeah.
She's offended at everything. She thinks it's ridiculous that they're even trying to live longer.
I think he describes her as being a bit pessimistic, but just give her a chance.
Cynical. Yeah,
cynical was the word. Anyway, you go back to the Black Mage Village, and she has some dialogue with some of the Black Mages about, why are you burying your dead? She doesn't understand this. Right. It's not like they're going to appreciate it. Right. So she's trying to understand.
Well, once again, because we talked about this before, there's that crystal that they would look at, but not to gain knowledge for themselves, but just to preserve neuroplasticity. It was purely like this utilitarian technical reason why they were doing that. So coming from a utilitarian perspective, burying the dead is a waste of time.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And so that's the perspective she's bringing here.
Right. So she asks them, why are they doing this? She thinks it's pointless. So Black Mage number 288, who's kind of like the chief of the village, he responds by saying that they don't do it for the sake of the dead. Like, this is the assumption that she's wrong about. They do it in order to remember their friends. And the line that he says here, and this was really great because this more or less wraps up right before we go into Memoria, exactly the relationship between memory and death, or the erasure of memory, that the ending of the game really puts a big emphasis on, that puts a big bow on the theme of this whole game. So he says, and we won't let the fear of death, which each of us knows, stop us from living our lives. So this is part of the reason why they bury the dead, and they make a point to remember their friends who have passed.
Right.
So there is going to be, it's just all over the ending here. And we've had now, throughout this entire game, characters who have been dealing with the fear of death, right? Coming to terms with mortality. And we've had two great examples of the two paths one might take here. You have Vivi, who sort of embraces it, understands it, accepts it, and deals with that in a healthy manner and becomes determined to live, and convinces the other Black Mages to do the same. They, for a period, let the fear of death drive them back to Kuja and his false promises of extending their life or giving them eternal life or whatever. So they let their fear get to them, and that fear drove them to, again, ally with Kuja and, do some, reprehensible things.
Right.
They have now understood Vivi's point of view. He has convinced them to take his route. On the other side, you have Kuja himself, who at the point of learning that he is going to die, not only that he's going to die, that he's going to die really soon, essentially just he falls off a cliff mentally from this realization.
Right.
No, if
rejection,
if I have to die, then I'm taking you all with me. And he goes like all the way, right?
Yeah.
So we have that fear of death. Again, I think fear is such an important emotion that people often don't realize is the motivating factor behind their behavior. Often fear is what drives us into our worst impulses.
Right, yeah.
And it's really, really hard to be introspective enough to understand that that's where that's coming from. Fear is often masked by emotions like anger or maybe even like righteous indignation. You might think it's that. Yeah. But what's really happening is you're afraid. You're afraid of your way of life being threatened. You're afraid for whatever reason it might be. And that drives you into beliefs, into behaviors, into whatever that are generally destructive. At whatever level that is, there's a spectrum. Yeah. But if you are afraid of a result and that's motivating you to action, I think there is often a high likelihood that your behavior can become destructive. That's not to say that fear is a bad emotion or that you should ignore it or useless. Right. It's to say that the fears, when they come, you fear a certain outcome or result. You can't let that be the primary driving motivator. You've got to say, okay, why am I afraid of that? Let's take a step back and let a different emotion, one that leads to the opposite of destructive, constructive.
Constructive, there you go.
Constructive behaviors, constructive habits, constructive discourse, banding together with people, with friends, with a group to do something about it that is positive in the end. So that, I think, is the real center of what we're going to be getting at here in Memoria and with the actual true final boss, which is Nekron, not Kuja. Right. A lot to talk about with that because there's a lot of criticism thrown at FF9 because of Nekron being the final boss and he wasn't set up or foreshadowed much. We'll get into all that.
Yeah, that arc comes and goes pretty quick.
But I loved that. I loved that line from number 288, which is essentially setting us up here for where they're going here at the ending of the game. So I thought that was great. He also brings up that the genomes of the Black Mages have so much in common because we were manufactured in Alexandria, but that technology wasn't developed by Alexandria. Kuja knew how genomes were made. He manufactured us based on that knowledge. If Kuja is also a genome, I wonder how he felt when he manufactured us. I briefly mentioned this in the last episode.
Right, yeah. It's probably where he got the idea. He got the idea to make Black Mages from where he came from. So he was just doing what he understood and what he knew from his own past, his own life on Terra. I also kind of went back through the beginning of the game. I like to do this sometimes as we get to the end because, there might have been things we said at the beginning of the podcast that I kind of forgot we talked about or whatever. Yeah. And there might be other things I pick up on that I didn't. It was really interesting that underneath Dolly, where they're manufacturing the Black Mages, there's a couple of points where Zidane points out the technology being used here. And Alexandria is not a very technologically advanced society like Lindblom is, right? And in fact, he points that out on the old airship that they're using to send these Black Mages back and forth. They're transporting them to Alexandria, right? This ship's old. The tech here was probably bought years and years and years ago from Lindblom, but those
those machines that they had down there underneath the village were like really advanced. This is all foreshadowing Terra and Terran technology, and the fact that Kuja was using Terran technology to manufacture these black mages. So there's a lot of things that are set up to the ending of the game that I think a lot of people miss, but it's really there all along, and it's actually kind of cool. And I missed that, having played the game several times, and then only just saw it, just kind of going back through the intro of the game again like yesterday. So I thought that was pretty cool. That. Okay, a couple of side notes on side content stuff. I loved that the four-armed man is Gilgamesh.
Oh,
so Gilgamesh is a recurring character in Final Fantasy. Yeah, he's in
a bunch of them,
Of course, the Epic of Gilgamesh has basically no relation to that story.
Gilgamesh was not a four-armed
As
monster.
Is most of the references to mythology in Final Fantasy. A lot of the time,
like Shiva. Shiva is a male god in India, but
it's just a cool name.
Yeah, it's just
totally different design, totally different everything, but they just use the name. Sometimes it's relevant.
Yeah, like the fire ones, Ifrit, or
But like, other times it's just they're just using the name without like really much deep there.
Yeah.
So that's the case with Gilgamesh. But Gilgamesh in Final Fantasy is a recurring kind of side gag kind of character, a funny character, maybe a little clumsy, not super competent, kind of a sidekick to the villain type character in a lot of cases. So I loved that the four-armed man who went by Alleyway Jack in the beginning of the game and taught you about Tetramaster, taught Vivi about it, the card game.
Right.
He says there at the beginning, I go by different aliases in all these different towns. Maybe someday, if you become good enough, I'll reveal my real name. And so the way that you get this is by discovering all the treasures in the world.
Okay.
And he's like, whoa, he's like blown away by how cool you are because you're the greatest treasure hunter, S rank of all time. And so he reveals his name as Gilgamesh, and he's going to try to become awesome like you someday. So that's kind of cool.
Oh, that's fun.
The Magnet side quest results in fixing the Magnet machine, get the super soft or whatever it is that Artemisian or whatever, the purple Moogle who had used it on his fur because he liked how it feels, but like it was supposed to be used to lubricate the machine.
That's so funny.
And so like the machine broke and their entire like Magnet was going to fail now. You can go there and fix that. Of course, you can go collect all the ultimate weapons for characters, finish all the friendly creatures. You can level up. There's a lot of stuff you can do. Oh, there's also a scene with Lonnie at Medane's Sorry. I don't know if you saw this.
No.
So Lonnie, who was one of the bounty hunters alongside Amaranth, who were hired to go retrieve Vivi and, retrieve Garnet, kill Vivi, something like that. She was unable to get back to the mainland from, because we fought her in Fossil Rue, right?
Yeah.
Which was on the way, like under the ocean to the outer continent.
Yep.
She got trapped on that other side when she tried to confront us in Medane's Sorry, and she couldn't get back. And so she wandered around for days, and the Moogles rescued her and brought her back to the village.
Oh, nice.
And she's totally rethought her life now and is like, I was too obsessed with money and all this other stuff. But it's funny that she will not talk to you if you have either Amaranth or Garnet in the party.
Oh, really?
If you approach her with them in the party, she just runs away. But if you come back and talk to her without them in the party, she'll explain this, and then also explain that she gives you a hint about the Eidolon Wall, that there's more information there now that you can look at. And if you do that, you learn there's a message left by Garnet's real father from the Summoner Village. And, he talks about a lot of things, regrets, and, he has a moral wound. He's not going to be able to wait a long time to see if they will return. Kind of talks about how he didn't have a perfect relationship with his wife necessarily, but most importantly reveals Garnet's real name, which was Sarah. And Sarah was the name of the princess
Sarah means
in Final Fantasy I.
In Hebrew, I think. Yeah.
So it kind of goes back to Princess Sarah, the original princess
that's
in FF1.
cool. Yeah,
so another callback to that, which is kind of cool as well.
That's fun.
So that's great.
The callbacks are fun, but they're not just shiny little Easter eggs. As we find out at the end of this episode, everything in the universe is kind of connected through memories back to kind of the source. And what's really cool about it is that I think, I think it's Kuja says like, through the memories within this crystal, I re-summoned the 4 fiends, basically, the 4 dark fiends or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, all the Final Fantasy, all the past Final Fantasy games are part of the universe, technically, here. And all the memories of them are contained within the crystal. And that's why they express throughout the game in ways that seem just like silly Easter eggs, but actually kind of lend themselves towards this memory theme that's happening within the game itself. And that all those stories are connected somehow through memory to the foundation of the universe itself. If you go far back enough, you have access to it.
Yeah.
This
is why earlier in the series, I sort of alluded to this idea that I have always felt that Final Fantasy IX was the only game in the series that actually lives up to that namesake, Final.
Yeah.
I don't think it was made with that intention. I don't think that Hironobu Sakaguchi went into this thinking, this is the last Final Fantasy I will make. It's clearly not what was on his mind. He was not expecting the movie to bomb the way it did and was expecting to, I'm sure, continue leading that series thereafter.
Well, 12 and 11 and 10 were already kind of being figured out by the time he left Square, but I wonder if he was maybe going to make Final Fantasy 13.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And so, anyway, the point that I make is that it just feels this way because of how much of that calling back, looking back, the fact that he wasn't necessarily super happy with the direction 8 had gone.
Right.
The fact that he was trying to look backwards, and the fact that it ended up being the last Final Fantasy that he conceived and directed.
Yeah.
All of that sort of conveniently fits into something that maybe by chance, maybe to some degree by design, feels like the last Final Fantasy within a certain design philosophy, within like a certain way in which it was made in its beginnings, that sort of led up to this moment, and then since then has sort of changed directions multiple times and has never really felt the same. And when I say it doesn't feel the same, I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just pointing out an observation that they're made differently.
They're just different. Yeah.
And there's multiple teams that work on them, and they kind of take risks and go different directions from title to title. And this one was made specifically to feel like earlier entries. It was meant to be a callback to that. So that's just the feel I get from this game. So we covered the Eidolon wall. Garnet's real name is Sarah. This is what is written on the wall. I survived the storm. I wonder if you two are okay. I see the two of you smile every time I close my eyes. I imagine I see you when I open my eyes. I have a mortal wound. I won't be able to wait for you very long. I regret being so unemotional for all these years. I'm writing down everything here in the hope that you'll read it someday. To my dearest wife, Jane, although we fought many times, I may not have shown my affection enough. I love you very much. To my beloved daughter, Sarah, my life changed when you were born. You made me happy. These are the things I want you to know. So I thought that was really good. A lot of people might not even know that is there. It's kind of really well hidden. The last of side content I think is worth talking about is Ozma, which is the super boss of the game. Okay.
The Ruby weapon?
There's Ruby, and the other one is Emerald that are really hard in Final Fantasy VII.
7.
I have tried looking into the design of Ozma, a lot of things, and can't really find much as far as how this boss in both name and design relate to a lot of the thematic content we talk about with FF9. But here's the kind of the best I could come up with. So it's basically a spherical monster. And it's just like this ball of swirling energy, but one hemisphere is made of kind of a light energy, and the other hemisphere is like a darker energy. So it's like more light on the top and dark on the bottom. You go to the Chocobo's Air Garden, which is the last of the places you play Choco Hot and Cold to fight him. It can be a really, really difficult fight, and that's mostly because its attack patterns are extremely unpredictable.
Oh, really?
It's sometimes you just kind of have to get lucky and hope he doesn't do this thing. There are a lot of great strategies you can employ to like give you better chances. And I think if you find all of the friendly creatures in the world, it makes it to where he will be vulnerable to physical attacks. Otherwise, he'd be unreachable. You could only use magic to attack him. So there are ways to make the fight easier, but it's notoriously a really, really hard super boss. Also, this was kind of funny. If you defeat Ozma before encountering Hades in Memoria, which is also kind of like a secret boss there, when you get into that fight, Hades will comment like, "Holy crap, you beat Ozma? Well, too late to back out now."
Oh my gosh, like that's hilarious.
So he like gets scared of you because you were able to beat Ozma before you got there. So it's just pretty funny.
That's funny.
I think Mene is the name of the little Moogle who is following the Chocobo around and like wants to go live with him in Chocobo Heaven.
Yeah, that one. Yeah,
does Choco Hot and Cold. So he describes the energy emanating from Ozma, or from the cave, I guess, that Ozma is in, as not of this world. So I guess you're kind of looking into a cave. This is where it's encountered. And since Ozma drops a pumice as the reward, which teaches the Arc Eidolon, which is like the final, most powerful Eidolon for Garnet, which is assumed to be of Terran origin, because I think you fight Arc as a boss on Terra. It's like at the end of the... It's at the end... I don't know if it's at the end of the... what's the sequence with the music? The You're Not Alone sequence.
Oh, yeah.
It might have been there, but it's somewhere in Pandemonium. You fight this boss. It's like the ship.
Oh, yeah.
Right? That you fight there. Anyway, so because Arc is of Terran origin, that boss is, they're assuming Ozma might also be a construct from Terra itself. That's as much as I can pull from like how Ozma relates to this game. If anybody else has more material, I'd love to see that. Maybe we can talk about it next time. But anyway, that's it. Now I think we can get into Memoria. And there's a lot of good stuff to pull from here.
I love the way we get there, because we go into the wormhole, basically. And then of all freaking people, it's Queena who is like, hey, if we do the teleport thing, I'm feeling the energy here. This is like that one time. We should all teleport right now, and we'll end up in the right spot. Now, I don't know how.
One second. Quick correction, as is pointed out here in the
Oil
chat.
Vert.
Oil Vert is where you fight
That's
Arc,
it.
and that is a Terran construction.
Okay, remember?
The castle, whatever it is, the dungeon is a stronghold of Terra. So it's still tied to Terra there.
Queena says, hey, let's all use the teleporter. And Zidana's like, are you sure? Like, why of all people is Queena the one who's like, hey, I know what to do now. Everyone do it. And my note here, it's Queena's the one with the genius plan to warp in. And then I wrote haha with lowercase. And then they actually did it. And then I wrote haha with uppercase. And it worked. And then I wrote blah haha, the Baku laugh.
The Baku laugh.
Because it's just hilarious. Like, you don't really expect it. Now, they need a way to get you out of the ship and into Memoria, essentially. And, well, they just had this be it. But it's hilarious that Queen is the one who introduces it. And more hilarious that they actually do it. And the final, the end of the joke, what is it? The prestige of the joke is that it worked. I love it.
Yeah, that was funny. So maybe it'd be good to describe what Memoria is. Garland... You hear Garland's disembodied voice, but he's only speaking to Zidane. No one else can hear him.
Yeah, that's right.
And he says, can you hear me? I'm speaking only to you. And he says, Garland, what is this place? Memoria, a place of memories. Yes, your memories brought forth this place. Here you shall witness the entire truth. You have no choice. Now go. So throughout this final dungeon, you come across numerous scenes at the beginning that kind of show moments of the past for our characters' lives. Things that they would be able to remember because they were present for them.
Yeah. And at first, Zidane was there for the first few, and so they're able to talk about it. But the people who weren't there cannot see it. Yes. They cannot see these illusions. It's very illusory.
Good point to bring up.
But as we keep going and seeing more of these memories, Zidane is still able to see them, even for things that he is sure he was never present for, that happened before he was born/created, however that works.
Yeah.
And so it starts to get a little confusing for him. But Garland won't tell him what's happening. Garland just keeps saying, "You'll understand in the future." And one thing that's interesting about this game is that its tendency to take villains and very simply just turn them into people that we listen to and have to follow, and turn them into not villain. Like literally the second that we defeat Garland and then Kuja shows up, Garland is no longer a bad guy, and everything he says is like deep wisdom. Everything before that was just like a joke, means justify their ends justify the means. All of the, typical stuff that you hear villains say. But he became a wise sage as soon as Kuja showed up.
Yeah, it's
similar things going to happen.
Think of it as he's passed, so like his stakes and all of this are over.
All right.
Okay, like here's like what's really going on.
Here's what we were doing, and here's how to end it all.
Yeah. So
it's pretty funny.
There's a couple things that I thought were interesting here. One, there's a scene from Garnet's past, like the Summoner Village.
Yeah, the boat.
The night that the eye showed up in the sky and they got on the boat. And Zidane is seeing this and doesn't understand, why am I seeing this? I wasn't here for this. This is Garnet's memory. I think the implication is he was on the ship. Right. He was on the Invincible when this happened. And obviously doesn't, in his active memory, sort of remember that. But as a genome was probably there and present for that, which I thought was pretty hard-hitting and would be a confusing wrench a little bit maybe in the relationship between the two of them.
Yeah.
They don't have time to like really sit and think about that, but
Good.
He may have been present, and who knows what role he played in that destruction and in possibly the killing.
Well, he would have been young,
and,
but like we mentioned earlier, Terra doesn't exactly have a flow of time. Yeah. So who knows how that corresponds exactly.
At the same time, maybe it wasn't, because I think that as it's described, it was 16 or 17 or however many years ago it was, Kuja like stole Zidane, like took him and just threw him down on the planet.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if that's like exactly true, but I thought it was an interesting possible implication there. But as you keep going further, we keep seeing like really, really far back into the planet's memory, so to speak.
Yeah, kind of like the creation of the planet itself.
Yeah, and you see the first attempt that Garland made to fuse the planets that didn't really work. And it goes further and further and further back, all the way to the origins, basically, of the universe. And it's sort of explained that these memories are what we might call maybe genetically passed on or something like that. So it's part of your DNA. So
Introns and extrons, right? These are the extrons.
We did say that this was the Xenogears part. The exons and introns. But no, there's sort of a genetic memory there. There's, all of it linking back to the crystal, which is the origin of life in the universe of Final Fantasy IX. And so as you're going, further and further back, you end up at the end, like at the crystal itself. There's a really cool pre-rendered background here where you like face Kuja and you can see the crystal back there in the background. And there's two kind of there's a red and a blue kind of ring or band that goes around the crystal. It's
sort of in the augury sphere looking kind of thing.
What was it?
I noticed
auxiliary sphere. This all goes back to episode 1 or 2.
That's right.
When
from
I talked
Dr. I can't remember his name.
Tot?
I always forget his name. Dr. Tot. Basically every time, right?
Yeah.
Didn't he have that, or was this somewhere else?
I can't remember.
Well,
but
he has the little observatory.
There's a motif in the game of these two worlds and, the merging of them. And that's all sort of hinted at even in that non-official Final Fantasy IX logo that has the crystal at the center of these auxiliary spheres.
Interesting.
Right. Which is kind of evocative of an augury, which is these mechanical models that have, either the sun or the earth at the center and the planets going around them. So all of this kind of hinted at imagery-wise throughout the game, and now we come here and we see that red representing Terra and blue representing Gaia bands around the crystal. Right. Crystal is at the center of all life. And so you're seeing the planet's memories, you're seeing the crystal's memories going all the way back. So what's being threatened here is not just Gaia. It's not just Terra has already been destroyed by Kuja. Kuja's now threatening to destroy Gaia. He's threatening to destroy the crystal itself.
Right.
He's going all the way. He's trying to erase everything.
Yeah.
And the reason why this final dungeon is Memoria, and there's this memory motif is because it's not just the end of life, it's the end of all memory of life.
Yeah.
It's erasing everything. A heat death, but like
immediate.
Brought about by this ultra powerful trance that he's in and this Ultima spell he can cast that can just wipe out everything. Right. That's the threat here. That's what Kuja's going for. And all of this born from his fear of death.
Right.
The fear of death has taken him all the way to this point.
And I feel like because he's accepted in some ways that he has to die, otherwise he wouldn't be doing this. It almost seemed to me like a fear of missing out. Like he has serious FOMO.
Serious FOMO.
He says that the world can't keep going if I'm not in it. Like it's all going to end with me. That way nothing ever happens in the future and I don't have to worry that I missed anything.
Yeah.
And so, but the Japanese is a little bit different. It's a little less that the world can't go on with if I'm not a part of it. In the Japanese, he says something along the lines of, a world without me would be worthless, which is a lot harsher, a lot more villainous, a lot harder there on him to say. It's kind of funny in a dark way as well. But yeah, he's got this opinion of himself that's pretty high that, a world without me is not worth living in. Why do you want to live in a world without me? Like, why would you want that?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he's just going to end it all. If I can't be in it, then nobody can. And I would say that it's entirely irrational behavior if it weren't for the fact that some people do things like this. You always wonder why people who do horrible things and then end their own life afterwards, like why couldn't you have done it reverse? So that way those horrible things just never happened. But people, especially people who are trapped in a very vicious spiral of thinking, it makes perfect sense to them that they want to commit horrible atrocities and then end their own life. And it's almost a joke that they're playing on the world when they do that.
And it's
like, suckers, you have to deal with this now.
Driven from fear.
No, sure.
Almost 100% of the time. It's driven by fear. It's motivated by fear. Starts with that. There's something that is so mortifyingly scary to them that they will do anything to deny or avoid or whatever, or in the case where that can't be done, well then all of you got to suffer the same fear as me.
Right, because it's not fair. It's this skewed idea of fairness. And I think Kuja even mentions that too.
Yes.
It wouldn't be fair. I can't die. It's not fair. It's not fair. Where did he get the idea that it's not fair that he has to die? Well, it's just how he feels, I guess. But most, all, possibly humans can kind of relate to that. Like, there's something that feels a little bit unfair about that.
Yeah.
But, you just can't take it where he takes it. The reason we saw 2 moons was because originally we only had one, and the red one was Terra's. Yeah, I think that's accurate. Well, I don't know if that's accurate necessarily, but I like that idea because Terra already tried to form or to merge with Gaia, right? And so it could be that the two couldn't merge properly, and so then they had to go their separate way, but the moon stayed around Gaia, the moon that was around Terra. Now, that being said, it's not unusual for a planet to have 2 moons. I think Mars has 2 moons. But, I think that makes sense, especially since one's red and one's blue. Also, the heavenly reality reflects the earthly reality, if that makes sense. You look up into the heavens and you see these 2 spheres of different colors about to merge, and that says something about Earth. That says something about what's happening down on Earth. There's a as above, so below. Maybe not theme, but idea that's happening here too. This is another thing. We talk often about like all legends are true in RPGs and in most stories. If you're going to bother telling a legend, there better be a reason for it. And usually the reason is, well, because the legend is actually true. Secretly, it's true. Well, one of the other things that people have an intuition about, other than that the stories they hear might be true, is that the heavens are meaningful and that the heavens are saying something about Earth and that there's something about the heavenly spheres that reflects on Earth. And our storytellers will use that. They will make the villain appear during a thunderstorm because the heavenly turbulence reflects the earthly turbulence. That's just kind of how the human mind kind of thinks. And so the fact that there's, two spheres up in the heavens in Final Fantasy IX, that is saying something. You have to put away your physics mindset, your modern idea of what the sky is and what the heavens are when you read stories, especially stories based on like medieval stuff and old stories and things like that, which is what Final Fantasy IX is. You need to look at the heavens and think that means something. What's happening above is reflecting the reality down below, and that's certainly the case with the moons. I cannot pronounce your name, by the way, but cool name in blue says brought up the fact that the two moons. That the red moon that showed up might be Terra's old moon from when they first tried to merge but couldn't.
A really interesting
thought, the moon carried over.
I could see that as being true.
But that's a technical physical explanation, and I'm saying, well, this is the real reason why an artist would do that, and it's to project symbolism. It's to show that as what is happening in heaven is also, happening on Earth in reality.
So we get to the confrontation with Kuja, unless you had any notes
let me just do a couple things. Quina saying, "We not in ocean?" I love how it's all an illusion.
Yeah, that was funny.
But depending on how you interact with the illusion, you can,
especially considering
she's
the whole
swimming.
imagination cutscene with Quan and everything from last time, right?
And you would also think, because then all the fish disappear once it is informed, once Queen is informed, hey, this is not real, this is an illusion, all of a sudden all the good food disappears. But it's hilarious because Queen is like, why can't I breathe? I can't breathe. Oh no. And then it's like, dude, there's no water. This is all we're in Memoria, which isn't to say it's not real, but it is to say that it's just a different landscape, and it's memory. It's all memories. You don't have to suffocate here. It's all good. Also, there's like a clock that we run past in between two different areas that's broken, totally broken. It's like the ticking isn't working properly, and there's like 4 arms. It's like a crazy clock, but it looks like a clock in general, and the tickers are broken. So it's like, once again, we've entered into the realm where time doesn't exist, right? Yes. We're outside of time and space, and we're into memory, pure memory. And I love the way that you take the idea of memory and just imagine the concept of like mimetic heritage, right? Mm-hmm. And try to think of a landscape for that idea, right? And just imagine traversing back in time through memories, going little by little. That's what's happening here. And you also see this tower still being built as we're walking up it. There's more bricks that keep descending from above, right? And so it's like the memories are still happening, and the tower is still being built as we're experiencing it, because new memories are still being made. But we're seeing essentially like an architectural manifestation of just the pathway of memory, and we're walking all the way back to the source of all memories, right? I think it's really cool. It may feel a little too abstract for some people, like what's happening here, but that's what's happening. We're on the landscape of memory, and it's artistically presented in what I think is a brilliant way. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I think it's great.
And then, of course, we have to take a leap of faith.
Yes.
Because Garnet, Zidane comes to, the point at the top of the tower where there's nothing more. Yeah. And that's kind of the point. There's nothing more, but there is still something, there's still something, even though it feels like you've entered into the nothing. And Garland tells him, you have to just take a step. Just trust me and take a step, basically. And so this is like Indiana Jones, the third one. This is the leap of faith. He needs to exercise and practice faith before he can actually get any knowledge of what's happening here. You can't just tell people. You have to give people maybe an assumption, and things don't make sense until you adopt that assumption, right? Until you adopt that bedrock, until you find that there is solid ground be on the other side, and that your previous assumption was incorrect. Oh, I thought I was going to die here. I didn't die. Oh, that assumption's wrong. This new assumption is that there is something else here that's maybe deeper or more profound or whatever. And when you adopt this new thing to believe in, to trust in, because you will die, he'll just fall down and die if it doesn't work. This is an act of trust. And trusting Garland, of all people, by the way. So it's very interesting that he's saying, okay, I'll believe you, Garland. Okay, and then it turns out everything's fine. But that I found that part to be very interesting. And then after the exercising of faith, then we come to the point that Garland led us to, which is, okay, now I can't be with you anymore. Like, I'm leaving, you're on your own. Yeah. And you're going to figure this out on your own, which is good because we're not having faith in Garland. There's something else that we're trying to get to. We believe that there is real truth. That's the real thing to have faith in, is that there's something deep and a source of meaning and truth, or something important that is beyond here, and that there is a way for me to get there. And so I will act as though that is correct and start walking. Oh, wow. Wouldn't you know it? Yeah. It works. Perfect. And so now we keep moving on towards the crystal. Yep. And here's just kind of a definition of crystal as presented by Garland. He says, the crystal is a presence that presides over all life and memories, right? Now, the crystal being an inanimate object, it is interesting that they chose that way, because darkness ends up being an embodied agent that can do stuff, right? But the crystal, which is where life and presumably goodness and memory and the world kind of emanates from, is inanimate. It's just kind of there. It's just a thing that's there. I found that to be very interesting. Maybe I'll just leave it at that. But one of the things that Garland says to us that in English I misread. Well, I didn't misread it. I actually believe that the translators did something sneaky when they did this. Garland, at the very end, before he leaves, he says, take care of Kuja.
Yes, that's right.
How did you read that? Because there's two ways to read that. And then I'll tell you the Japanese.
If I take this all the way to the end, where Zidane obviously goes back for Kuja and takes pity on him and everything like that, I think the idea here is that Garland, I guess having passed on into some other, realm,
memory,
understands the fear that Kuja is like a victim of this terrible, terrible fear, and that there's pity in that sentiment of take care of him, right? Like, he doesn't really understand what he's about to do.
Sure.
He's childlike in a sense. Obviously not maybe in the same sense that Vivi is. Vivi's obviously a newer constructed being, but still a constructed being who has, a bad understanding of his place in the world. Was obviously, Garland was the source of a lot of that, making him feel like he has only this purpose and that's all he's good for. And if you step outside of that, we can just dispose of you. You're good for nothing.
That's why it's kind of funny.
This is, I think, touches on upbringing being a big part of the things we believe and our ability to deal with our fears when they come up. And so Garland expressing that, I think, is an admission to his failure, or the one having caused in a larger degree this situation.
Right.
But also just taking pity on him because of how traumatic this fear is and how far it's taking him. So I guess that's how I would read that.
That's more or less how I read it as well. That take care of him. There's something deeper within him that can be
saved,
redeemed. Something redeemed, like that. Than just how awful he's been. The Japanese says kill Kuja. Now here's the thing, or eliminate, or get rid of Kuja, something like that.
Yeah.
So the fact that the translators changed that to take care of Kuja. Yeah. Now you can read that as I got one more thing to take care of. Got to kill the bad guy, right?
Yeah. You could use that to take care of him.
Yes.
is another way to say kill this guy or get rid of him or whatever.
But wasn't that an interesting choice on the part of the translators to choose a wording that can be taken both ways and that actually makes sense and applies both ways?
Yeah.
Right. And especially it does also kind of lay a little bit of one breadcrumb for what Zidane does later on, which is, he's my brother. I have to take care of him, right?
Yeah, right.
And in a different way, right? I actually feel like the translators did a brilliant job of that, because maybe when I first played the game, I don't remember this, but I can imagine that when I first played the game, it's like take care of business, you know?
Yeah.
Do what you got to do, kill the guy, come back, everything's fine. But as I read it now, it's different, and that's not in the original Japanese, unfortunately. Well, I don't know if it's unfortunate or not.
It's just
I don't know. It's just not there.
Yeah.
But there's something in me that kind of likes the way that the translators took a liberty on that particular line, because it still gets the idea across if that's what you're thinking. But it also opens the possibility, lays the groundwork for something else, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's really cool. So this is the first of 2 bosses. I guess we should mention.
Oh yeah, there's
the 4
the
fiends.
dragon thing.
You fight the 4 fiends on your way here. You know, this is also a tradition going back to the old Final Fantasies. You fight them like as you go about restoring the crystals, or as you go about like going through the game, and then you fight them all again as like bosses. You know, leading up the gamut that leads up to the final boss. So it's kind of what they do here. I just have to mention also, you know, we've talked about this, I think even in this series, the video we did where it was like Limit Break and you're like destroyed the moon. It's like so powerful and the guy like walks away. So I used Arc, which is like the final summon, a couple of times in this final dungeon. I summoned Arc, and it is one of those just, I mean, absurd, almost in a funny way, just how huge of an attack it is. And it's like, it got kind of like in Final Fantasy VII, you know, you leave the planet itself and there's like this meteor coming down. It's like destroying all the planets, and it like slowly comes down.
Right. It destroys every planet. I remember that. Oh my god.
So the Arc is an attack like on that so level of just absurd power. And, you know, but there's one battle I fought where I think it was against Kraken, if I'm not mistaken. I might get this wrong, or I might remember it miscorrectly. But it does like a couple thousand damage. And
it's like
does not kill it.
3% of the HP. Yeah.
The other I don't remember which other battle it was. There's another one where it did, you know, max damage and killed. So like it seemed appropriate. But
well, even then, I don't know.
But in this other one, it like didn't even do a fraction of the freaking HP of this boss. So I thought that was kind of funny. But okay, so the confrontation with Kuja. So you fight Kuja.
Yeah.
And as you finish that battle, he still casts Ultima and tries to destroy the crystal. So it's like, you're too late, blah, and like gets off the attack.
Classic, yeah. Classic.
And as a result of this, there is an entity, a cosmic entity known as Nekron.
That's right.
Who appears.
The eternal darkness.
Yes.
Right.
Embodying death and oblivion.
Yeah.
Just total
annihilation. Yeah,
right?
Annihilation.
So this being Nekron explains that it has been drawn out. It basically came into existence, I think you could say, by Kuja's destructive will, and sees that as proof that what what life really wants is to be erased.
To die.
The suffering of life is too great.
Right.
What life is actually after is an end to suffering, an end to everything, a total annihilation, and return to a zero world, so to speak.
Thanatos and the Death Drive. We talked about that in Nier Automata, I think.
And it's actually something that Keith brought up as I was doing my notes for this episode, Thanatology, right?
Oh, very nice, yeah.
So
Freud had a lot to say about that.
Yeah, so let's go through what Nekron says here. You stand before the final dimension, and I am the darkness of eternity. All life bears death from birth. Life fears death, but lives only to die. It starts with anxiety. Anxiety becomes fear. Now, I didn't love this line because it's just pulled straight out of Star Wars.
It is straight, and wouldn't you be surprised to hear that the Japanese does not quote Star Wars?
I wondered about that. Yeah. I was going to ask you about that.
Nope. This is a total intervention. I just praised the translators previously for doing something kind of cool.
I don't like this.
This was not great.
Now, that's not to say that they don't reference pop media all throughout the game.
Biggs and Wedge and Actually, is Wedge in this one?
I don't think Biggs and Wedge are in this game.
Okay.
But, you know, that is a tradition.
They're in a few of them.
Reference to Star Wars and other games. And there are other places where they make references to pop media, not the least of which is The Matrix, when Zidane is falling through the Epha tree and they do the stop
that's right.
camera move.
Next to
right next to Kuja when he finds him there.
But usually it's not like this important.
Yes. Okay. There's something about this being the pinnacle, like dramatic moment of the game. The moment where it's like the greatest threat is there. Yeah. And then just like straight up quoting Yoda, fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. Now,
which then makes you think of puppets.
I guess so.
It makes you think of Jim Henson, the puppet master, and it just makes you realize that aren't we all just like puppets, you know?
But taking away the phrasing there, right? It's still exactly the thematic sentiment we've been driving at here. Fear leads to all of these destructive
anger, hate,
behaviors,
suffering,
and tendencies.
Which then in turn lead to suffering.
Right. So the fear of death is something that is being suggested here is a necessity to overcome in your life. It's we all have to face that thought. And I don't know who listening here, right? This is not a pleasant thing to think about. There have been times where I'm going to sleep at night and I just start thinking about the moment of death or something like that.
Every now and then.
And you just get that kind of like immediate sort of like unsettling butterfly swirling in your stomach kind of feeling. You're like, ooh.
It's like apprehension, anxiety.
Yeah. We're all born with that fear. It's programmed into us.
Yeah. Freud called it death anxiety.
Yeah. Right. And so, you know, a lot of people, I would say most people, they probably just go, ooh, don't want to think about that. And they just avoid it and avoid it and avoid it and avoid it and avoid it because it's not pleasant, scary. And the real scary part is that at any moment that might just come seize upon you.
Right.
And how, and this is me speaking, this is just my philosophy on life, how traumatic, horrible, scary, awful that experience will be could be directly linked to how much introspection you did on this and how willing you were to come to terms with, accept, find peace in the thought of it. And I, for one, do not want to be caught in that moment whenever it comes and have not reached that point of acceptance because that makes your death really freaking terrifying.
I'll bet.
So it's just something that I think is really important and necessary for us all to do at some point, as unpleasant as the thought and the notion and the introspection is. And we've talked about this so many times on our podcast and so many different games. It's almost like we're destined to just keep playing games where this is the point of the game. Most notably, probably the Outer Wilds. If you haven't seen our Outer Wilds series, we talk a lot more about that there.
Yeah, check it out. Also, though, it's like, who said this? The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Yes.
Right? There's something to that, right?
Yeah.
And it's weird to say, oh, you should be afraid of fear. But this is kind of what it's talking about.
Yes.
Right? Fear leads you to do crazy things.
Yes.
Get rid of the fear, and that's kind of hard. But the only thing to be afraid of is what you might do if you are afraid of something.
Yeah. And, I was talking to Keith a little bit, and he was sharing that, one of the scariest thoughts to him is not just the thought of death of himself, his own personal death, but this idea of the total erasure of all memory. The fact that it all comes to an end, essentially what the concept behind heat death is, it's the destruction of the entire universe, and there's nothing left for anyone to draw upon to remember anything that happened in that entire, I can't even give you the number of how many years it will take for that to occur.
Right.
But it's
I've heard
really
200 billion or something. Maybe more.
No, way more than that.
Really? The dwarf stars, you think will go in the trillions?
Because there's a whole period of the universe where it's going to be a dark universe where it's only
where
black
there's still
holes.
heat.
So like there's
I
still
see.
matter,
I
right?
see
And
what you
black
mean.
holes still exist, but
Okay.
there's no stars left.
I see.
And for the entropy of black holes takes such an unimaginably long time.
Especially the big
but,
ones.
the Hawking radiation, which sort of like leaks
Yeah.
bits of, I'm not getting into all this freaking stuff, but eventually
still be
black
some
holes
heat.
die too.
Okay.
And so it's not until all the black holes are dead that you get like the true heat death of the universe, and then entropy is complete and everything else.
I see where you're going.
So anyway, the amount of time it will take for that to happen is just totally unimaginable. The number is so insane. But anyways, that's not the point. Point is that fear, right? He says here, the only cure for this fear is total destruction. Kuja was a victim of his own fear. He concluded he could only save himself by destroying the origin of all things, the crystal. Now the theory is undeniable. Kuja's action proves it. All things live to perish. At last, life has uncovered this truth. Now it is time to end this world. I exist for one purpose, to return everything back to the zero world, where there is no life and no crystal to give life. In a world of nothing, fear does not exist.
It's not a world.
Yeah.
Yeah, we also talked about this with Death Stranding as well, right? Just this stasis of absence.
Yeah. This is the world that all life desires.
Yeah.
Foolish creature, your fears have only deluded you. Because I think Zidane tries, what the hell are you talking about? I don't
Which
buy
he
that.
says about 100 times.
He's just,
but it's also interesting to hear him talk about a purpose. I was created for one purpose.
Yeah.
And it's like, this whole game is about beings being created for one purpose and somehow still finding the will or means to
break out of that.
do other things. Yeah. But this one, this is one of the dangers. Actually, this is a fascinating thing that we can talk about as well. That should Eternal Darkness, should Nekro, should he accept his fate?
Yeah.
Should he accept, I was made for this purpose? Is acceptance the best thing here? Or should he maybe do more what Zidane? Because Zidane and Vivi have taken slightly different paths. Vivi is just a little bit more, he's a little bit less active, I suppose. But Zidane is like, when he learns the truth, he I don't know that he ever necessarily accepted it. I think he rejected it the entire time. He's kind of a balance between Kuja and Vivi, if you think about it. Zidane isn't, Vivi's the acceptance, Kuja is the extreme rejection, but Zidane is the, okay, I see what you're saying, but also I totally reject it, and I'm like doing my own thing, right?
Yeah.
Now, Vivi rejected his purpose too, but he wasn't even a killing machine even at that point, right? So it's not that he rejected it consciously. It's that he had already passed that point, and now he needed to come to terms with what he was created as in the first place. Zidane immediately turns to fighting against his creators and just trying to, kind of rejecting his purpose and all this kind of stuff. I don't know. I found that to be quite interesting. And then we have Eternal Darkness as well, who is the extreme acceptance of what he was made for. Nekro, which is to make everything be nothing. And he's totally cool with that.
Yeah.
But we're actually getting multiple different instances of the same problem being dealt with in a different way, and extremes on multiple ends, taking them, maybe more or less bad. But Zidane is kind of like in the middle. Maybe the example, I don't know, if Vivi or Zidane would be the better example of how to deal with this stuff.
Some kind of balance, right?
Yeah.
Like
even between those two?
Between extremes or something like that.
Maybe that's what Mikoto would have been. She'll be the balance.
So one day you will choose destruction over existence, as Kuja did. When he sought to destroy the crystal, the purpose of life ended. Now come, enter the zero world that you desire.
Yeah, this is like, it's basically just nihilism. There was something about this in the English script that made me think that this was kind of a critique on Buddhism itself, on the concept of nirvana.
That would work.
I've never heard that before.
And in fact, I think there is some truth to that, because
I think so.
The characters were designed, as we've discussed, with Buddhist principles in mind.
Right, yes.
And there was something about this, like, sort of nihilist villain. In fact, there was something that I looked up that I'll get into because it's in the notes here, but it essentially kind kind of pointed to that as well, as it being, what would you call it? I don't know how to phrase this, but it's like taking the Buddhist principles but getting the wrong idea out of it.
Yes. Which brings me to Arthur Schopenhauer, the guy who Nietzsche was like, because people say that Nietzsche is like the nihilist, par excellence, right? But the fact is that was actually Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer learned about Buddhism and I think kind of came to the wrong-ish conclusions, but you can't really blame him for it. It's a foreign idea. And, the Eastern people who lived with it for thousands of years, the idea of kind of embracing or emptying, I think that's the word, to empty, to void yourself of all attachments and to really empty yourself. That's like a Buddhist philosophy, but it's not one that results in nothingness, right? But the way that Schopenhauer kind of interpreted it was, but what is there? Like once you empty and get rid of all attachments, what are you and what exists still? Yeah. And his conclusion is nothing. Like essentially nirvana is zero. It's total absence. It is nihilism essentially, and that's what Schopenhauer came to. But I maybe people who are raised in the East or people who are Buddhists, I would love to hear your perspective on this, because my understanding is that a Buddhist person would read Schopenhauer and be like, "What are you talking about? That's not what I believe." Like there is still like there's still being, right? There's still unity of something. It's almost the idea that if everyone's special, then no one's special, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's like once you participate in a grand unity, then once there is nothing but one thing, then there is no differentiation from that one thing. And what's the difference between all being one and one being just nothing? And I think that's where Schopenhauer kind of really had a hard time, and he couldn't figure it out. But the majority of people who live this Buddhist teaching and who understand it, they don't feel that way at all. They don't feel like it's a total nihilism. They feel like it's an embracement. It's embracing goodness, actually, even though it maybe is still an emptying and avoidance of attachment. So anyways, I had a difficult time understanding whether or not this was critiquing Buddhism itself based on the English script, because the Japanese script is way more nihilistic. Nekron is way harsher. He is so insanely nihilistic in this that I believe they actually censored it in order to when they were making the English version of the script. That they really toned it down into he has a lot less lines. He says a lot less just words in general, and he is still kind of getting the idea across. But in Japanese, he is like hammering it home. Like, there will be nothing. You are nothing. Everything is nothing. Everything exists to be just nothing in the end. And it's way more intense than the Japanese one. Yeah. So I believe that it's not an intentional necessarily a critique on Buddhism, but maybe a way that people have taken Buddhism to kind of step into the void of nihilism, which Schopenhauer found to be an easy step. Yeah. And I don't really know what to make of that necessarily, but Nietzsche made fun of him for it. So there's that.
There's one thing that I want to say that's kind of a side tangent. Just to clarify kind of like my own personal beliefs, I guess. Mm-hmm. I think that there's kind of two definitions for nihilism. There's nihilism as it was like actually proposed and intended versus nihilism as it is understood in the popular consciousness, which are two kind of different things. Nihilism as it actually was proposed and
is just
zero. It's essentially, it just means a lack of belief that there is an inherent value in the universe or something like that, right? As it's written here, the doctrine that nothing actually exists or that existence or values are meaningless. It's just a lack of meaning in it, or inherent meaning, right?
So meaning of zero. I see what you mean.
Where this is kind of like the opposite of what religions teach, which is
there
meaning, is deep inherent meaning,
including Buddhism,
right?
By the way,
So, but what I think popular consciousness understands nihilism to be is a relentless negativity or cynicism suggesting an absence of values or beliefs. Like the person is without values or beliefs, personal morals, and this sort of like relentless cynicism.
Yeah, that's probably how I'm using it to describe Kuja right now.
So, there could be truth to that as it applies to a character or something like that. The only reason I'm making this distinction is to say that that the term is thrown around really loosely, and maybe this is a futile fight on my part here. People are going to use it that way no matter what I do. So I think that's why it's become an accepted second definition.
Words change meaning over time.
Yeah, right.
Thing, yeah.
But that's not really what nihilism is. It doesn't mean the person doesn't have personal values or can't have personal values
I
or
see what you're
something
saying.
like that.
Yes,
just because they're a nihilist. They're just saying, I don't believe the universe out there has some inherent meaning in it.
Gotcha.
Right? That they're a belief in God or a belief in some higher deity or being or spirit or consciousness or something that gives meaning to this thing we live in. Right. Rather than it just exists, it is, but there isn't something like truly inherently meaningful in that we create the meaning as we look on it and sort of like try to figure it out.
Gotcha.
So I say all this to say, like, I'm, by that definition, something of a nihilist myself. You could throw the meme of...
I'm something of a nihilist myself.
But I think that's misunderstood. But I think if we're looking at nihilism by the second definition, and, Nekron, I think, doesn't even necessarily come across as like, deeply cynical or something like that, as much as just a being that
kind of practical,
thinks
actually.
practical and thinks it understands its purpose, which is to relieve life of this fear that is at the base of its existence. This fear is so terrible and causes so much suffering that obviously life seeks to escape that state of suffering, that fear. And so I am here to deliver that. And were you to live long enough, you would also inevitably reach that conclusion. You just haven't suffered enough yet to be at that point of acceptance that it's overcome you, and that's essentially your destiny. That is the argument that Nekron is making. Fool, you just haven't lived long enough to get it yet. I have made some kind of similar, not exactly the same, argument in the past about eternal life. If you've lived long enough, eventually you'll not want to live forever.
I was actually going to ask you to clarify what the difference is between the philosophies expressed in this game by the villains and your own.
Okay, so
or is there not?
This has been so funny to me. Funny not in like a ha-ha funny way, but in a unsettling kind of way to some extent, where the older I get, the more I feel like I align with villains in these JRPGs.
Oh dear. Is that an alarm bell?
Whether it's like Expedition 33 or this game or whatever. I think that here's how I would, I guess, go about clarifying that. This idea about the acceptance of essentially heat death or like total erasure of memory or there not being an inherent meaning in the universe is always characterized as the second definition, the overly cynical, leading you to destructive behaviors, driven by fear or resentment of that fact or something like that. And I don't feel that is at the motivation behind my beliefs at all. I think it was Beardmo who said somewhere in here that he finds the idea of that heat death to be like a comforting thing.
I've heard people say that.
Right? And I can't really explain it any other way than that. Like, I just don't have the fear of that a lot of other people do. Some of that might come from the fact that I've had experiences with death and other things that have sort of like helped me come to terms with that and be okay with it. The fact that all things come to an end. Right. And it seems like the longer I live, the more I see how hard that is for people, especially something they really loved.
Yeah.
And that's basically
Final Fantasy.
That's the
just
entire.
Kidding. Just kidding. I'm excited to play 17.
That is like the entire practice of life.
Yeah.
You come into life and you have all of these relationships and things that you obtain and knowledge and this, and you just have to come to terms with the fact you're going to lose all of it.
That's so crazy because we're like at the hump middle age, no, not middle age.
Yeah, we're approaching middle age,
midlife
crisis,
point where guys usually buy motorcycles because they feel like they haven't done enough risky stuff. And it's so funny. You spend the first half of your life collecting things, getting things, finding things, picking things up, and the whole second half of our life, which we are going to be experiencing, is going to be losing all of it.
Yeah,
all of it up until the day we die. We slowly start to lose our relationships. The people we cared about, the things we liked, everything. It just slowly disappears until one day we die, and then it's all gone, right? And it's so interesting to think of, the accumulation and then the filling up and then the emptying out as the slow process of life, and something that you kind of have to learn before it starts happening, before you start losing all of these things, that you should learn about impermanence and how to deal with it.
Yeah, and so I guess where I'm coming from in terms of like my thoughts on this in the past is it's never been motivated by a cynicism, but rather by just an acceptance of a reality, which is what you just described. I don't think that a successful life, as we often do, should be judged by how much you accumulated or how much you accomplished or how much you did. It's how well you are able to accept losing it, because you're going to lose all of it.
That's very interesting.
How
I kinda like
gracefully you can lose.
Well, because some people get old and you can just see it in their eyes. They want to hold on to everything they have, every penny, everything that they have. They're collecting all kinds of things. And no, don't you dare touch it. This is mine, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, bro, you're going to die soon.
Yeah.
And like, no, I'm not, right? I don't think they believe. I think they believe that they will not be dying soon, even though they're like 90. And it's like they're still, and you can kind of see it. And it's like those are often people who make the world worse. I don't know if I should put 100% on that, maybe, but I would say tending towards, if you're one of those people who is trying desperately not to lose everything that you've accumulated in your long life, because you're afraid of letting go, of losing it, of dying, that you might not really be helping the world as much as maybe.
And I would say a fear. I mean, it's so absurd almost to talk about heat death and like the erasure of the universe. It's just so beyond what any of us have any hope of experiencing.
But as George Carlin said, an asteroid could easily.
I mean, like the destruction of our planet or something like that, but like the
yeah.
destruction of the entire universe is what I'm saying. So like, you know, and I have, Keith is here. We've had him on the show. We've had this conversation many times. We will continue to have it, I'm sure, after this. I absolutely respect and admire the work he's doing and his reasons, his motivations for doing it. And I think our where we cross in terms of where we agree versus disagree is like way wider than it might seem. I think we agree on a lot more than we disagree on.
Oh, probably.
But there's
having talked to him, absolutely.
There is an element to me of inevitability to this. Like this is, as far as we understand, where things are going. And you know, even Keith described this as being one of the like greatest fears that he has, the thought of like the erasure of memory of everything, right?
Right.
And I'm just not afraid of that.
Well, we can only hope that there is a crystal at the center of the universe that is preserving all those memories.
I have no fear of that notion. And I think that it's really important, and he believes this too, to live your life in such a way to where you are comfortable with losing things that were important to you.
Yeah,
and
that's probably smart.
And having the attitude after that loss of smiling because it happened, not crying over what you lost. Right. And that's not to say that there shouldn't be a mourning process. You should mourn your loved ones. That's all healthy. It's just the general sentiment is celebrate what you had and appreciate it instead of being so afraid of losing things that you cling onto it and you lose what time you have left. Living back there, wishing you could go back there, and not being present where you are. This, to me, is at the center of my beliefs about whether a person would eventually get tired of eternal life and all these other things. I think at the heart of it is still a fear of this total death, this zero world, this annihilation of everything we know and love. And I'm not making this argument necessarily today, but some might make the argument that philosophies, religions are the byproduct of that fear and people turning to something to give them hope that they won't lose.
Right.
No, I'm not going to lose my families. Yeah. I'm going to continue to live with them in heaven forever. And that this, all I'm saying is I think it's important to learn how to lose gracefully and with appreciation. And that to me, I think, is the mark of a really successful life.
I love what you're saying, but what does it matter to lose gracefully if when you die there's nothing?
It doesn't matter. And okay. I think that's the important bit here.
You would have to care about the future.
It's okay for it not to matter.
Okay, how about that? Very nice.
There's an acceptance of even that,
okay,
right?
Okay.
And that goes back to the nihilistic view, which is there is not an inherent meaning. And right, how scary matters, is that to you versus how well can you accept that if it is in fact true? Of course,
well, if it is, there would be nothing.
We don't have an answer to that. We won't find out till we die, anyways.
No, even when you die, if there's nothing, there will be no you to find out.
You won't know it.
Yeah,
exactly. Okay, so we're going back to Nekron here. We've already said it. Okay, so anyways, we had that whole discussion about nihilism and all this stuff and clarifying my points. But what I'm getting at here is that what we described there as Nekron, or as you brought up, Schopenhauer, taking the wrong idea away from Buddhism, I think is kind of what this is being framed as. So this is my assumption about Sakaguchi's theme here, right? Given, of course, that he comes from Japan and Eastern philosophy. So Zidane rejection of this nihilistic being is to say, no, we'll destroy you and prove you wrong. And through our memories, future generations will see that we can overcome any fear. So he has a different answer for how to overcome fear.
And it's not acceptance.
It's not acceptance of the zero world.
Right.
It's rather accepting that your own personal death, but passing on memories to future generations, having life continue, and that, those future generations will see the deeds that we've done, and it will inspire them to overcome their fears as well and make life better in the future. More or less. Would that be how you would read that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is acceptance in a way. Like Kuja wouldn't even accept that he was going to die. Zidane is totally like, yeah, I'm going to die one day. That's fine. Right. He's not rejecting that part. What he is rejecting is that it's all going to disappear. He's saying, no, we're going to keep the memory alive, and the memory living itself is valuable.
Right. So then you fight Nekron, final battle. You overcome him. You assert that life's struggles and connections give existence meaning.
Yeah,
which is a very common, I guess, JRPG sort of like conclusion.
Right. It's the friends that you made along the way. This also does have reference. We've said that almost every game we play.
Pretty much.
There's a point where we can make that joke.
Yeah.
So Martin Heidegger has this idea of Dasein, which is being, but it's not just being in and of itself. It's being somewhere. That there is no being unless it's in a context, unless it's in an environment or something like that. And so Zidane has found his being in the context of his friends, right? And that's that's like the environment that or the landscape in which he has kind of identified his being, right? And that is something that can be preserved. And it's like a different plane. It's a different way of thinking. And it's not just being for being's sake. It's not just existence. It's existence in a context, in a place. And that context is also what gives meaning to your life and to your being and all of that stuff. I feel like there's something there. Also, Heidegger had his idea of thrownness, which is basically Vivi, which is just like, I just woke up one day, I'm freaking here, this is crazy. So I think he's being pretty clearly referenced here within the game. But there's another line here from Zidane. It's right before the fight. And he says, even if I were created to serve one purpose alone, I do not regret being born into this world. I thought that was a really interesting line. If you pressed him on why, it doesn't matter why. Like this is how he feels. This is how he thinks. He doesn't regret it, even after learning everything. Like I feel like Vivi had to go through a point where he regretted his own existence. Zidane never seemed to have to go through that. He didn't regret being born. He just immediately was like, well, you gave me these dope weapons to destroy a world with. I'm just going to turn them on you. Like he never even thought of like, I don't know. He just didn't seem to deal with it the same way that Vivi did. Existence itself is good in its own right, even if it was meant to serve one purpose. And even if it rejects that purpose and chooses another, that existence or being is still good, right? That there's still like something about it that is valuable. And he's saying, even if it was just this one thing, look at the life I have, look at the friends I have, look at what I've been able to do. It doesn't matter why I was made, I think is what he's saying, that I have found meaning here and I have found ways to help people and that I can pass that on into the future.
Yeah.
So
you defeat Nekron. He's vanishing. I like his final line as he's disappearing. This is not the end. I am eternal. As long as there is life and death. So essentially he's fear, right?
So we didn't really
embodiment of fear.
Beat anything then.
No, because there could be somebody else with the same fear in the future who might try to destroy the crystal.
We beat our own fear.
Yeah.
But fear will still exist.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at this, again, from the thematic lens as Zidane and the party essentially overcoming the fear of death. That's basically what this is. Right. And this is a really important point to make because it's going to play into this response I have to the criticisms of Nekron as a final boss in the game. But this is essentially at the heart of what Final Fantasy IX is talking about here, which is this overcoming of fear, that fear drives all of these, I'm repeating myself at this point, apologize, destructive behaviors. You have to overcome that fear. Nekron is the embodiment of that fear, the ultimate embodiment of the deepest, darkest, most horrible fear possible that drove Kuja to do something so insane as try to destroy all of freaking life and the origin of all of life. That level of fear is what they overcome. And this is something we all have to do at some point. I think so.
And only once you overcome that fear can you truly begin to live. Right.
So let's talk about Nekron and his role in the story here a little bit. One of the more common criticisms I see here is that Nekron as a character is not foreshadowed in any way in the game, just really kind of appears out of nowhere. This feels like, out of left field a bit. Didn't necessarily love this.
He's not called Nekron in the Japanese, by the way. He's just called the Darkness Eternal, something like that.
Okay.
But that is 4 characters in Japanese, and it's like 15 characters in English. And so it's like, okay, they had to make a name that was a lot shorter than that, and they went with Necro. But something akin to eternal darkness has kind of been foreshadowed within the game, I think, that there is, a pit of nothingness that you could fall into and lose yourself.
Yeah. So as a response to that, this is how I would put it. Nekron isn't a character with a backstory or a personal connection to Zidane like Kuja is, right? Kuja is a character in that sense. He is the villain of the story in that sense, where they have a personal connection. Rather, it's a cosmic force. It's like a will of the universe, or just an embodiment of Kuja's fear, right? That sort of leans towards this death and non-existent sort of philosophy. He appears after Kuja's final Ultima spell, which nearly annihilates existence itself. The destructive intent essentially called Nekron forth. So Nekron didn't exist in the universe,
like as a thing, right?
as a being.
Yeah,
it was a concept, a fear of death that became material,
embodied. Yeah.
through the act of Kuja's Ultima spell, the attempt to try to destroy everything. Right. He states plainly that life inevitably leads to death, and thus he intends to accelerate the process by returning all to the void. So, essentially, Nekron serves as a thematic villain, not as a personal one for the plot.
Okay,
it's the climax. It's the thematic climax.
I see where you're going.
Of Final Fantasy's story.
Yeah. Okay.
Not a personal villain in the sense we traditionally think about it.
Like, ooh, he's the real bad guy.
Yes.
Because as we've mentioned before, who is the bad guy has already changed and one-upped, and no, he's got another boss. Oh no, now he's the real boss. And it's done that maybe one too many times.
Yeah.
And this one might have been the last straw for people, but you're right. It's not a character necessarily. It's not a new villain. It could even be Zidane battling within himself. You know? And not even necessarily the super villain who was pulling the strings the whole time, you know? But you could say that, yes, fear was pulling the strings the whole time as an abstract concept, because that's what drove Kuja to do all the stuff that he did. So I get that. But yeah, if people are maybe being a little bit too literal with what they're seeing here, you could come to that conclusion. But if you accept that the emotions we feel and all of the things that drive us are powers above us, then it was clear the whole time that Kuja has had something over him that was driving him this whole time. So
Nekron was present in the entire game.
Yes,
in
the form of
Vivi's fears,
fear,
in Zidane's fears,
in the other Black Mage's fears,
It was there in Kuja's fears. Nekron was always there. It was just this terrible, terrible fear, and it became embodied as Nekron, the final boss, but I don't even know if you necessarily need... I mean, it kind of becomes an outward force, but Nekron is more of an internal battle conceptually.
Right.
And so what this represents is the party finally overcoming that.
Yeah. But remember, we're in the landscape of memory here. We're in Memoria.
Yes.
We're not in a physical place.
Yes.
We're in the landscape of, it's a whole different like dimension almost.
Yes.
And that's where fear exists as this embodied thing.
Yes.
But see, I don't blame anyone for not getting this.
Yeah, I don't either.
For just assuming that it's another boss. Oh no. Right.
So Nekron represents the erasure of memory. He wants to reduce everything to non-existence where nothing can be remembered, nothing can be passed on. The party's victory is a rejection of that even fleeting lives matter because of the bonds and memories they create. So memory is the purpose of life in this story.
Yeah.
And Nekron represents the erasure of that. The beings only live to die. We got to get rid of this fear. No, fear is not the thing that life is about. Memories that you create in your life with people and experiences. That's the purpose of it. So Nekron might not be foreshadowed as a character, unlike, other villains of the series, but he represents this, like I said, thematic climax rather than a narrative climax. This isn't even uncommon in the Final Fantasy series. This has happened multiple times in multiple games where you think you're fighting the final villain who has been the character you're following around hoping to take down the whole time, but then like some cosmic force just comes in after that and you just fight that instead.
Right. Usually a stand-in for a god of some sort or something like that.
Final Fantasy III did this with the Cloud of Darkness. So you think you're fighting Xandi the whole time, you defeat Xandi, and then the Cloud of Darkness appears. Again, this is a tradition of the series almost, and the whole game is pointing back to traditions of the series.
Interesting.
So this isn't even, something that's like out of left field for what they typically do. You have Zeromus in Final Fantasy IV, right? You fight Zemus at the end, and then Zeromus comes after that. the narrative role in FF4, Zemus manipulates events, but when he dies, his hatred becomes Zermus, this primal destructive entity. Right? So it's very similar in that sense.
And there's something cool about that, although if you just if you are too much of a strict materialist when you're playing the games, you're just going to kind of not get exactly what it's pointing to.
Yeah.
But this is a good point. You're building a good case.
Yeah. So then you have X-Death in Final Fantasy V, and then the Void, right? X-Death uses the Void, a nothingness between dimensions, as a weapon. Here, the Void isn't a character, but a force manipulated by a villain, right?
Yeah.
Very similar to Nekron in that sense. And although I don't think necessarily Final Fantasy VIII or 10, obviously not 10 that came after, would have had an influence on this. You know, you have Yu Yevon in Final Fantasy X, very similar concept.
Right.
This mindless parasite that endlessly summons sin over and over again. So, not to spoil any other Final Fantasy games, but this is not an uncommon thing to see in Final Fantasy. So,
or Xenogears games. Just,
now, there's a couple other things that were really interesting that Keith brought up in my note-taking section here that I wanted to go over. This idea of the fear behind this destruction of memory, right? Like memory being kind of memory going away being kind of the ultimate death. Sure. And that there are a lot of cultures in the world that try to overcome what are called the three deaths. When you actually physically die is the first death. When everyone who you knew dies is the second death. Anyone who had an actual personal relationship, knew you, physically lived in the same space and time as you, when they all die, that's kind of a second death.
Well, may you be so fortunate to live that long.
And then the last time anyone ever hears your name or says your name, it ever comes across their lips, that is the third and kind of final death. And now you are essentially erased from the memory of humankind at this point. There are very few people who survive that. They become like historical figures written about and discussed.
Thousands of years.
But even eventually those records die and civilizations are forgotten. Yeah. And, at some point, like, you will suffer that third death no matter how famous you were. So, as he was describing, there's a lot of cultures where there are these memory rituals to try to prevent that third death, right? There are some cultures that actually dig up the dead, like the corpses.
And speak their name.
And parade them around and have parties with them. It's like no joke here. In Indonesia, you have what are the Toraja people. And they have a ritual called, I'm going to butcher these, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce the words correctly. Manene, where basically every 3 years after, so first of all, they have a really intensive burial ritual. Like sometimes it takes years to actually bury their dead.
Oh, wow.
Because they have to prepare it correctly.
In Indonesia?
Yeah.
That's a humid place. That sounds
So like
rough.
they have like a corpse sitting around their house until they can raise the funds, because a lot of these people are poor, to actually like do the ceremony correctly. There's a very, very, intensive burial ritual. But then after that burial ritual is completed, every 3 years, the people of Lambang Patong village dig out the mummified bodies of their loved ones to clean them up, dress them in new clothes, and then bury them again.
Wow.
The ceremony, celebrated by all the families in the village, is a key element in their belief system, which combines Christian and indigenous concepts. The idea behind it all is that death is not the end of a person's life, but rather another step, a very important one, in a very long spiritual life. For this reason, every detail of a person's death, burial, and afterlife must be carefully seen to, and family members spare no expense in fulfilling their duties. The resulting ceremonies are so lavish and complex that tourists go from all over the world to witness them. And this is all done to keep that person in memory as long as you possibly can, to avoid death, right?
Yeah.
So memory is like a really, really key element that we as humans use to try to avoid death, in a sense, to leave a legacy, to leave some lasting mark to where your name will not be spoken that final time, and then you're just forgotten, right? This is our only answer to mortality that we have currently. And maybe Keith will find a different answer.
They say to live on in a story, right? To live forever in stories. That is, and I think Achilles was kind of seeking that, the glory of the old Greek, times. And if you can win some kleos, if you can win some glory, then your name will live on, even though you perish.
Right.
And that was the goal of a lot of people. Oh, you got enough glory, you're going to live for, they would have thought forever, but hundreds of years, thousands of years.
Yeah.
After.
In Madagascar, you have the Malagasy people.
Malagasy, yeah.
Who have built a way of life around death. During the dry winter months, they have these ceremonies known as the turning of the bones. It takes place around various towns and villages to commemorate the deceased. Once every 2 to 7 years, each family holds a huge celebration at their ancestral crypt where the remains of the dead are exhumed, wrapped in fine silk, sprayed with wine or perfume, and brought out for community festivities.
Wow.
Right? They actually bring these people out to have a party with them, and then they put them back. And then, of course, there's the Mexican Day of the Dead, which is, again, another holiday ceremony ritual to remember their ancestors.
Remember the dead, yeah.
So these types of memories are key in Final Fantasy IX's answer to that nihilistic take on the answer to this fear. Like how to overcome the fear, just erase everything. No, we're going to use memories.
You could not do that.
We will remember our dead.
Yeah.
Which is what the Black Mages were doing. Which is
yes.
what they brought up as the reason why they do what they do to
Right.
Mikoto, who did not understand why.
Yeah.
We'll keep them in our memories, and our memories will continue. We'll pass those memories down, and this is how you overcome the fear of death.
I like that. That even as they exit their existence on, the mortal plane, as we call it, on Earth or Gaia, that they continue their existence in memory, in Memoria.
Yeah.
Right. In this place. The song, I don't know if we're going to go over the lyrics to Melodies of Life.
Yes, we will.
Okay.
For sure.
There's one line in there that I would say Sakaguchi wrote himself. That is that, sometimes I feel like I can still hear your voice, even though you're gone. Right.
Yes.
And now the song was written by Hiroyuki Ito, under a pseudonym, but he wrote it. It was not written by Sakaguchi, but that line, especially, I feel like that line would have hit Sakaguchi pretty hard. Yeah. Right, because obviously with his mother, we're making some assumptions here, but I think that something like that might be true for him.
Yeah.
That there's this line in Lord of the Rings too. One of the songs at the end of the Fellowship of the Ring, the one with the boy choir singing.
Yes.
And he says, "But in dreams, I can still hear your name." Right, and it's like there's this mystical world of memory, right, that sometimes we feel like can every now and then touch with the real world, the real world, the physical world of our experience. And I feel like those would be the moments. Now you brought some, what I would say are extreme examples, but within that culture it's perfectly normal.
Sure.
And it's perfectly understandable too.
Yeah.
And gosh, there's something regrettable about the way that we Western moderns treat our dead as though it's like a corporate,
Yeah.
What would you call it? Everything looks the same, uniformity. Just find a square plot in the midst of a bunch of other square plots, and we never go there. We don't. It used to be a mark of shame on a family if their ancestors' graves were left unkept or if there were weeds growing, or if they didn't have fresh flowers every week or a couple weeks. For us, you're lucky if we visit your grave maybe once on Memorial Day, probably not even that often. I don't see my ancestors' graves that often. I probably couldn't even tell you where most of them are. I know where my grandfather is, but I couldn't tell you the others. And part of that's a product of my grandma died in Mississippi.
Yeah. I'm
not going to go 3,000 miles to visit her grave. My mom does every year.
Yeah.
And that's great for her. But even once a year, I don't know, there's something that we've lost in the way that we treat our dead.
Your mother going to visit will die with her.
Right, exactly.
Most likely.
Yeah. Because we don't live in the same place anymore.
Is that then the third death of your grandmother?
Yeah.
Right. And that's what these cultures,
the
answers they came up with to try to not do that.
And none of them will work permanently, but all of them often have more meaning to the living than they do necessarily for the dead. I think as Black Mage 288 clarifies. That it's like, we also do this for our own participation with them, And it's not just for them being dead. It's also for us as a community. Once you lose connection with your past, with your ancestors, with your family, with your history, you lose a lot when that happens. And it's worth it to try not to lose it, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. And I love how that all comes together. And, that scene where you might not even have seen it. You might not have even gone back to the Black Mage Village after leaving at the beginning of Disc 4 and seen Mikoto say, what is the point of burying dead? What are you doing? But that scene even more effectively, I feel like, gets at the point here than the battle against Nekron or like anything else. It's so simple and subtle, but like that's what the game is saying. And if we tie this back to Sakaguchi and his obsession with the Gaia hypothesis, right?
Yeah, exactly.
His idea here is that, at least in 2 of the worlds he's built, whether it's FF7 or FF9, that those memories will be carried on by the planet.
Right.
Or that they're carried on by the crystal in this case. Right?
Sure. Yeah.
The collective memories, they all go back and sort of accumulate either in the crystal or in the life stream, and they continue, and they won't be lost. And so memory is essentially how you overcome the fear of death, according to what he's getting at here. And maybe was the answer that he himself came up with, because he was obviously traumatized, horribly, in so much pain after losing his mother. And that inspired so many of the stories he wrote afterwards.
And his mother died in a fire. This was not she got old and naturally. Yeah. This was a sudden, traumatic, tragic loss for him.
Yeah, so this brings it all back to what I was saying earlier. You don't know when that's going to happen. It's a lot of times it happens very suddenly. You can't prepare for the time or the day. You can only prepare for how will I feel about death? How will I feel? How well can I accept and let go of this life and memory system I have here when that time comes? And I think that'll determine how scary it is versus how peaceful it can be.
We read about Socrates and the way that he died. It's fascinating. He basically got all of his peers, because he was executed basically, but his execution was that he had to drink
like a poison.
Yeah, a hemlock cup. Like there was this like green liquid thing that he had to drink, and then he would die. And people told him to run away. You don't have to do this. And he was like, no, we're good. He'd been around a while. He's like, I feel like it's time. He took the cup, and he had his students around him when he did it. And all the descriptions, and there were a lot of accounts of this, well, at least a couple that have survived, but that's a lot for 2,500 years ago standards, was that he died very peacefully, that he was prepared, he was ready. He did it willingly, he accepted it, and even in that moment, he was brave, you could say.
Yeah.
That's kind of life-changing to read about Socrates and his approach to how he died.
So you leave Memoria, come back out of the Eve tree, and I think Sid is eventually, like, the party has discovered they're thought dead for a minute, and then, Beatrix, I see them, they're there. And then,
well, it wasn't Beatrix, it was Mikoto.
Beatrix, oh yeah, you're right.
And it was so funny because when Mikoto's like, no, they're still alive, and Beatrix was like, how do you know? And basically, I was expecting, because she does say this a little bit later, I can hear their voice. I can feel their spirit or something like that. Yeah. No, Mikoto goes, just because I see it. They're just right there.
Yeah.
She just like points. And Beatrix is like, with her one eye, is like, so it is, like the Monty Python sketch with the guy with the lazy eye. Yeah. Oh, so it is. And then he's like, but that other ship is closer, right? Sid's ship is closer, so maybe he can get there.
That's another pop culture reference that the game makes is Steiner says it is but a flesh wound.
Oh, really?
Earlier part of the story.
When he's fighting with Beatrix.
Yes.
Yeah, totally Monty Python reference. So they're still around, and Sid shows up, and basically, as soon as they're all about to get rescued, all of a sudden Zidane hears a voice, and you don't know who it is at the time, but Zidane does. And he immediately just kind of rolls his eyes, and he's like, I've got to go save my brother, don't I? Dang it. All right. Okay, everyone. And he does the thing I kind of wish they didn't do. There's a few nitpicks I have about the way this ended, and it's fine. The way it ends is fine. I'm not going to say that this ruined the ending necessarily, but there's a few things that could have made it more perfect. And
Sure.
high five all its previous themes. Zidane, once again, is like, I'm going to go alone. You guys leave. I have to do this alone. And I thought that he was over that.
Yeah.
I thought he had accepted that his friends can help him and that things are okay. Now I know why they did it. It's a narrative device. You need to not know if he's alive or dead. It's
Yes.
the Schrodinger's Zidane. You don't know. You don't know if he lived or if he didn't live. And if the whole party was there, then it's like, oh, then who do we show in all the scenes where people are talking about whether or not they don't know if he's still alive, right?
Yeah.
So they had to leave. I just don't like that it kind of negates one of the big lessons that Zidane learned, which is let your friends help you, man.
I'll say
at the very end, he still doesn't accept help.
I see where you're coming from with that. I think that you have a strong point. I wonder if he's not doing it because he thinks he's the only one who can do it, as much as you guys have like really big responsibilities.
Right.
Like Garnet can't risk her life coming down here to save the guy who just tried to destroy the entire universe because you got to go be the Queen of Alexandria. Okay?
For some reason, I have to do that.
I have to do it because I have an actual tie to this person.
Right. You guys don't.
I have a responsibility as a genome who came from that world that tried to destroy this one. You know, like there's an actual like bond I have with that. None of you have that. I'm not going to force you or ask you to risk your lives when you have more important things to do. Now, I get that for Garnet and probably Steiner.
Maybe Steiner, yeah.
And
not Amaranth or Ake. Although Amaranth just leaves on his own. He's
Amaranth
just like,
wouldn't have gone anyways.
And Zidane's like, let him
Amaranth's
go.
like, this is stupid. I'm out of here, right?
Yeah.
So like he wouldn't have gone
But
anyways.
Freya, I don't know. Like she still has stuff to do.
Yeah,
they
they're-
help rebuild Bermesia. And all that,
Yeah, I guess that. I think that's what he says. Like
Yeah.
you have a responsibility to Bermesia and all these other things. You have ties to the world that are more important to you than saving this guy who just tried to kill everyone and everything. I have an actual bond with him. I don't know why. Well, I do know why. I know you don't get it, but I have to do this.
Yeah.
And so I don't see it so much as him rejecting his friends as much as just realizing they don't have any legitimate reason, and it's probably a bad idea.
But I would add to the top of that Zidane doesn't really have a legitimate reason to do that either. Other than you don't need a reason to help people.
Because Garland said, take care of Kuja.
Yes, in English he said that. He didn't say that in Japanese. But when I say he has no reason to do this, it goes right back into his original portrait quote, which is you don't need a reason to help people. And it's like
good point.
This was part of my notes because I had a whole process here because I was like, what's happening with Kuja? He's gonna die anyways. Like this character can't be redeemed, right?
Yes.
Now he can in a way that we want to believe that he can, but also no one who's watching this game wants Kuja to survive this. We all think he needs to pay for what he did. He can't just, everything isn't going to be rainbows and butterflies because it's not that he just like, he tried to annihilate everything, everywhere, anywhere. Like whoever has that brain can't exist in polite society around other people. Like you just can't. Everyone has a grudge against him, including us in the audience. But as it happened, I did kind of have some other thoughts, and Frodo actually came into mind. Frodo with Gollum. When Sam is like, why do you keep trying to reach out to Gollum? He's lost, man. And Frodo's line is, I have to believe that he can come back. Or what does he say in the movies?
Yeah, because
I have to, because I am like him.
Yes,
Yeah.
and Zidane does say
that.
something like that. He says,
He's like,
I could have easily been
Exactly.
Kuja under different circumstances.
Very good. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. And because of that, he sees himself. And also, he doesn't know how the genomes are going to be accepted. He doesn't know what's going on here. He just knows that our race deserves some redemption, and I'm going to go see if I can find it in there. If there was still some goodness left in him, that we don't just go bad because we were programmed wrong or because traumatic things happened to us, that we can overcome it in a way. And while I guess Kuja sort of overcame it after being forced to be so weak he can't do anything anymore. But he seems to have accepted his own mortality at least now.
Yeah.
But Zidane jumps. This is actually a really cool cutscene. The way he's like surfing on the vines. I liked it. It's silly. It's really funny. And he almost dies like 12 times. And he's like getting all like arrogant as he's like sliding down him. He's like, oh, and then he jumps again because everything's going crazy. But another thing that really stood out to me is that, well, this just happens in movies. I don't know who started this trend. The trend of, because you're the protagonist, you have to reach out to save the antagonist, and then they die anyways. But it was important for the hero to show that he was willing to save them, but the audience is like, but he can't be saved, so he still has to die.
I'm not sure that Zidane reason for going back was to save Kuja, because he also knows he's going to die. It's more, he doesn't want him to be alone as he dies, because this is the thing Kuja's the most afraid of.
Okay.
And he wants to be there with him to give him comfort as he passes.
Well, that makes me read this whole thing very different.
Yeah,
I like that.
This is
I assumed it was a rescue.
Yeah, this is essentially what I pulled out of this. And this is also one of the hardest things, I think, for people in general to learn or accept. Particularly if you're the family member of a victim of a murder or something like that, and you come face to face with the murderer, right? Whether it's in court or you're there for, I don't know, public execution or whatever. I guess public execution is more of a thing of the distant past.
Well, in some places, they still
if you're there for the execution, because they were, condemned to death or whatever. They don't do that in all states or in all places in the world, but there are still places that do this. Anyways, point is, you come face to face with that person. I think one of the hardest things is forgiveness of that person.
Yeah.
And it's not even just so much the forgiveness, it's just, or I guess in order to get to a place of forgiveness, I think the only way you can find compassion is to understand the upbringing.
Right.
And this is exactly what
the fear and forces that made it happen.
That caused that destructive behavior was born from a fear that was probably born from trauma that was inflicted on this person at a young age. Right. Maybe even those who we deal with this all the time in this country, the school shootings and things like that, right? Yeah. Like, why? Like, what? How did that child get to that point? Because they are still children; they're in school. How did that child get there?
Right. And
it's really easy to characterize them as monsters, even in my line of work, right, which is anti-human trafficking. The characterization of these perpetrators as these monsters, I understand, and I don't hold it against people for like using that image to condemn somebody, and they should be condemned for the action, and they should be removed from a place where they can do more harm.
Yes,
and there need to be consequences for that. Yeah. But there is also, I think, a root of the issue we're not addressing by not getting at the fact that this is almost always caused by fear and trauma that was inflicted on them. There's a cycle of this kind of abuse, right? And what Zidane is realizing in this moment, and what he says out loud is, under different circumstances, if I were raised by Garland, I would have been Kuja.
Right.
If Kuja were sent to this place, Gaia, and just left and abandoned the way I was, he would have been me. There's really something to that developmental stage where your beliefs are instilled. And it's not to say that this is not something that can be overcome, right? There's still a level of agency here.
Yeah, I think so. Because most people who are abused do not go on
become
to abuse.
that.
Yeah. But some of them do perpetuate that cycle.
But I think that to a larger degree, that's because they learned a healthy way to deal with those fears and traumas. Those who do not become much more destructive.
Right.
And to what level of destruction?
Well, it goes from Kuja all the way down.
Because the level of trauma, like how much it traumatizes you, is totally dependent on a different brain and how they interpret the events.
Yeah.
And something that might not seem that traumatic to this person is horrifically traumatic to this person. But it all boils down to how much fear, how much pain, how much self-hatred, trauma, whatever, to what level do you feel those things? It then transforms into those destructive behaviors. And again, this is not an excuse of those behaviors. It is not a, well, had they just been raised differently, they wouldn't have done this, so it's not their fault. It is. We all have choices to make, and Kuja made the wrong choices.
Yeah.
But I think there is compassion to be found in understanding that most of those terrible choices are driven from a fear that many of us might not even be able to imagine. Right. And so he takes compassion. True. He's not going there to save him or give him a chance at redemption. He's going there to give him what he never had, which is someone who cares about him, to be with him, to give him some companionship in one last moment. So he won't have to be alone and afraid.
You know how I mentioned the place to call home for Zidane?
Yeah.
Isn't really a place, it's people.
Yeah.
That in that sense, he gave Kuja a place to call home for his last moment, which is between the two of them, right? That the space between the two of them, the inner subjectivity space is this is the context where for your life, right? This is a place that you can be at home, right? Just with me. And this is so funny because Garland mentioned previously to Zidane how similar he was to Kuja, and Zidane just spat in his face and said, I'm nothing like him. In fact, I think Zidane said, no one's like me. I'm so unique. I'm so special. Me. And here at the end, he's realizing we are very similar. And that Garland was right. Like I mentioned before, Garland turned from the awful, horrific villain into just this sage who is right about
under different
all kinds of things.
Yeah. Garland would have been freaking Gandalf.
Oh, jeez. But in some ways, that's, there's something, that's what Zidane is going through here. And he's with that acceptance. It's not just accept it for the sake of accepting it. It's accept it and then go do something. And he went and did that. That's good. I like your reading on that. Yeah. And in fact, I like your reading on most of the stuff that you're talking about here in this game. It gives good context here because obviously, despite Kuja, being awful and doing what he did, Sakaguchi has this ending for Kuja for a reason, right? Yeah. And we're supposed to take something from that. Yeah. And I like that because I couldn't really find much to take from that.
Yeah, I don't think he's trying to redeem him so much as just take compassion on him. And he doesn't need to have a reason to do so.
You don't need a reason to help people.
That's Zidane's virtue.
By the way, okay, guys, this is going to be one of the last times, possibly the last episode I mentioned him, but Vagrant Chocobo, check out his channel. He had a really interesting observation into the translation differences here in this last moment with Zidane and Kuja. Because Zidane says, Kuja says, why did you come back to help me? It's kind of an Amaranth. Amaranth kind of line here. But Zidane in English says, oh, come on, you'd have done the same for me.
Yeah.
You just tried to kill him. And it's like, ...
That was really funny.
Never mind. It was really funny. But here's what the line read in Japanese.
Yeah.
Do you need a reason to help people? That's what he said in Japanese.
Oh, that's so good.
He doesn't say that. So that's his quote on the card.
I love that.
He doesn't say his quote in the game in English.
Yeah.
But he does in the Japanese.
I love that.
He says, do I need a reason?
From the start screen, if you wait, right, and you see his page come up, you don't need a reason to help people? I love that.
That insight comes from Vagrant Chocobo. Rate his channel, watch all his videos. He's great.
That's really great. I love that. That's a fantastic punctuation on the character's arc.
And the English, I don't know why, but they decided to put a joke in there instead. And it's funny. I really did kind of get a chuckle, right? Because Zidane's just like, what do you say to your greatest arch nemesis in the final moments when they finally softened up and you can actually have like an honest like moment where you can be together and like not try to kill each other, right? Or him just laugh at you pretending he's the stage master or whatever. And you actually get to talk. Sometimes a dumb joke to break the ice is perfectly acceptable. But knowing that was the quote from his portrait card makes me kind of not love that the English translators did it the way that they did.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I'm okay with it how it is. I did get a laugh.
Yeah, it was very funny. But it's also just a great moment. And, Zidane does this knowing full well that he might die,
Right.
and almost expecting it to a certain degree.
Yeah.
And so you know the vines come down and sort of like smash down, and you're presuming that he's gone. And we move into the final scene of the game, the FMV, where all the people are showing up to Alexandria again. Nice little bookend, beginning and ending in Alexandria, right? You know, start off with the excitement and bustle of Alexandria for the play.
That's
now
right.
the excitement and
it's
bustle
the same play.
for the play again.
Yeah.
Great bookend.
I loved it. Yeah.
Of an ending.
And you
on
see
this.
all of Vivi's kids
Yes.
in like the front row clapping.
Now
That's hilarious.
Here's something that's kind of sad too about it.
Yeah.
Vivi's children are there.
But
Why
is Vivi not? I
there?
couldn't tell because they look the same.
No,
is
he's
Vivi not there?
He's not there.
Okay, so he stopped.
Vivi stopped.
Okay.
So that's kind of the bitter part of this bittersweet ending. But
remember when we first encountered the Epha tree, and after the whole thing was over, Vivi was saying there will not be any more black mages. Like I just ended the production of black mages.
Right.
I don't know how but
they found a way.
Some life
finds a way.
Thank you, Ian Malcolm. Life finds a way. Even cloned artificial life finds a way. So yeah, he's found a way to continue on his race. There will continue to be black mages in the world. And that's what he had mentioned to Zidane. Like, I wonder if black mages and humans and the rest of people can get along at some point. You know, if the genome experiment comes to fruition,
works out.
Then if it works out, then maybe we can enter into the rest. And it seems that maybe not in his time, but his children are able to attend a play in
Which
Alexandria.
was what Zidane was talking about. In our future generations, we pass these memories down, and that fear will be overcome.
Yeah.
Through
And
memory.
It's I Want to Be Your Canary. And they say that it's Marcus playing the character.
Yes.
But he's got that hood and cloak, and it's like, that's not
the bait
Marcus.
and switch there.
That's not Marcus, yeah. But this is where we get the line, no squall, no cloud shall hinder us.
Yes.
Right? Which is
so a lot of people brought that up as the reference to FF8
one
that's in the
FF8
game.
reference.
But you have to also understand this is not what they say in Japanese.
Oh, yes, the Japanese doesn't say that.
Because those words are not, they don't work.
They wouldn't,
right?
it wouldn't have made, especially squall. Like,
it's such
even
an
if it's
obscure
katakana,
word.
the meaning of the English word squall, it would not be easily understood by a Japanese teenager.
So this is not necessarily Sakaguchi throwing in a Final Fantasy VIII reference.
It was the
as much as it is the
translators.
translation team throwing in a fun reference.
Which I appreciate.
I did too. I thought it was great. But then it's really beautiful, and the music is so great as Zidane throws off the cloak and says, like, what does he say? Like,
come
my
to me,
love,
my
come
dagger,
to me, or my dagger, or something like that.
Yeah.
And then she just jumps up and she's just sprinting through the castle.
Yeah, what is it that she dropped? Because I have two ideas
pendant,
of this.
I think.
So the pendant that was the 1/4 of
the one that
So she like leaves it and takes off her crown.
Yeah.
So what do you think of that?
Yeah, she just I don't know if I have any deep thoughts about it as much as he is more important to her than her station, which for the whole game she had kind of been prioritizing.
Yes.
Right above him. It's my obligations as the queen to the people. I can't
that comes first.
be with you because that wouldn't be right and proper, and I'm supposed to be this. And she's just saying, no, to hell with all that. Like,
yes.
Yeah.
I agree with it, although you don't ever want to watch your queen take off her crown and say, oh, screw this, I'm doing something else, and throw it on the floor. But the jewel, she loses it, and she's like, I'm leaving that behind too. Yeah. That represents maybe her summoning abilities or something like that. But someone else is going to pick that up. Like, you got to go get that. Like, those 4 shards, they're important. But yeah, she sheds her titles, and she becomes just a commoner.
Becomes Dagger.
Yeah.
She goes from
becomes
being
Dagger,
Garnet to becoming Dagger. Because he calls Dagger down to him, not Garnet.
Oh, that's right. Good point.
And so she sheds Garnet, becomes Dagger, as she falls into his arms.
Yep.
And
I'm assuming they got married.
I'm assuming so too.
Because that's how fairy tales end.
Beautiful ending.
But that makes this whole game a comedy.
Yeah.
So there's one Final Fantasy comedy, and it's FF9.
And I love that Beatrix and Steiner hold up the sword. You get the glint from the sword, which then becomes the sword of Alexandria, the giant one, the crystal-like sword.
It looks the same. Yeah.
Which is, again, a bookend from the beginning of the game. It's
and
just
it's
fantastic.
Steiner and Beatrix.
It's really great.
Because Steiner finally confesses,
Yeah.
well, he doesn't really. He just kind of, he
guess we
sort
don't
of
see
hints
it,
that
but-
he likes her, really.
But yeah, they're together
Yeah,
now.
because she's going to leave. But he's like, no, protect the queen by my side. And then she's like, oh, that's basically saying I love you.
And
Which,
I think
in
there's-
the English, Eiko says I love you.
Oh,
Not in the Japanese, because, they don't say I love you all that often. But Eiko says something else. It's not I love you.
so it's a really great ending, and I think is it like a post credits thing? You see that Freya and Sir Fratley got back together. He still doesn't remember.
Yeah,
but and that's another thing. The memory to be forgotten is like worse than death, kind of thing, right? Or it is a form of death.
But Freya is prioritizing the memories that they will make in the future
Yeah.
over the sorrow for the ones that she lost in the past.
Yeah.
Right.
Which
It's
is
like,
the acceptance of what you lost.
Yeah.
Make the most of what you have in front of you, which is the whole attitude you must take to overcome this.
And she can play some funny practical jokes on him, knowing that he doesn't remember anything, but she remembers everything about him.
Yeah.
But he doesn't remember much about her. She can use that to her advantage.
Anyway, that's the end of the game.
Yeah.
Now, the final musical theme for the credits is called Melodies of Life, which was the melody that was used all throughout the game. It's like the main theme of the game and was used in leitmotifs everywhere. So I figured it'd be good as a kind of a final part of this to go through the lyrics of that song and look for all the times they say memory.
Yes.
And how important that all is. So I'm sure you probably have the Japanese version. I have one that is a more like literal translation of the
that's
Japanese.
not the Alexander Smith one?
No.
Okay.
And then I have the English version, like the
Well,
official
that's good.
version.
That's good. That's fine. I just looked at the Alexander Smith one.
Realized earlier you said that Hiroyuki Ito wrote the song. Did you mean? No. Alexander Smith translated.
He translated it, but it was written by Hiroyuki Ito. But I don't
we're
know. Sometimes translating music that Alexander probably took some liberties.
I just realized we could have had him on for this part just to discuss this.
We could have, but I don't know if he
maybe
just
next
for
week.
one part.
Maybe next week.
That'd be fun.
We could just talk to him. We'll record like a 10-minute conversation just included.
That'd be great.
Okay, so here's the official English version. Alone for a while, I've been searching through the dark for traces of the love you left inside my lonely heart. You can see a little bit of Freya just in that.
Oh, yeah.
To weave by picking up the pieces that remain, melodies of life, love's lost refrain. And also, I could see this as being Garnet in the moment before she realizes Zidon's still alive, right? So she's looking back on those traces of love left inside her lonely heart until he just appears. Bam, I'm still alive. Our paths, they did cross, though I cannot say why. We met, we laughed, we held on fast, and then we said goodbye. So that line right there and the next one. Actually, the next two. So there's 3 lines here that I think really embody everything we've been saying. I don't even know if we have to elaborate on it. We met, we laughed, we held on fast, and then we said goodbye. And who'll hear the echoes of stories never told? Let them ring out loud till they unfold. In my dearest memories, I see you reaching out to me. So we have here the memories you create with people. We met, we laughed, we held on fast, and then we said goodbye, the eventual inevitability of death or of losing someone. Who will hear the echoes of the stories never told? How will this memory be preserved? Who's going to tell that story? Let them ring out loud till they unfold. In my dearest memories, I see you reaching out to me. So memory being a huge thematic through line here. Though you're gone, I still believe that you can call out my name. That's the voice. That's the one you said.
That's what I was talking about.
Yeah.
It just seems that's a powerful line. It really is.
A voice from the past joining yours and mine, adding up the layers of harmony. And so it goes on and on, melodies of life.
And think of that idea of harmony, that each new life is stacking onto that harmony, making it even more beautiful than
that
the last.
Actually evokes like Middle Earth imagery to me with the song.
Creation.
The creation myth, the song of, the song of the Ainur or the Valar.
Yeah.
To the sky beyond the flying birds, forever and beyond, so far and away, see the bird as it flies by, gliding through the shadows of the clouds up in the sky. I've laid my memories and dreams upon those wings. Leave them now and see what tomorrow brings. In your dearest memories, do you remember loving me? Was it fate that brought us close and now leaves me behind? A voice from the past joining yours and mine, adding up the layers of harmony. So it goes on, Melodies of Life. And then to the sky, beyond the flying bird, we're kind of repeating some stuff here. If I should leave this lonely world behind, your voice will still remember our melody. Now I know we'll carry on, Melodies of Life. Come circle round and grow deep in our hearts as long as we remember.
And then here, Mufasa, remember, remember
who you are. Yeah. Here's the unofficial, maybe you could characterize it as more literal, direct
literal, yeah.
Translation. I was wandering around aimlessly. I kept on searching without a clue. I made a song to heal my heart with the memories you gave me. The days of embracing and confirming without even making any promises or deciding on the words to say to each other are never to return. Waving your hand in my memory, you can call out my name, transform those overflowing tears into shining courage, and life will carry on, transcending the night, and continuing to a tomorrow where there is no doubt. How many memories have I entrusted to the sky beyond the flying birds? I have forgotten them in a place where fleeting hopes and dreams are out of reach. We can say it as a coincidence, or we can say it is a coincidence that we met. The time will surely come when we will say goodbye, and yet, as long as you are alive, even if I'm doomed to fade away, life will go on forever, in every way to the best of its ability. As long as you are alive, even if I die, life will endure forever, lasting no matter where it goes to the best of its ability. So,
it's still beautiful, although definitely more direct.
More direct, less poetic, less beautiful, I suppose, in its use of language. But the memory motif is all over there.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
And again, sort of the outlasting, the inevitable goodbye through that memory, remembering, which is what the Black Mages talked about. They basically told you exactly what the game's about. That scene might be the best scene in the whole game.
Yeah.
At least thematically. But that's it. That's Final Fantasy IX.
At the very end, after the credits, we see two spheres kind of like come together, and then some like light or something like that. Yeah. It's hard to tell exactly what they're doing there, but two worlds combine / collide at the very end there. I didn't quite know what to make of that, but it seems as though there's a merging of two things into a new thing, something like that. That's probably what I would have to read that.
All right, guys. Long episode, but we have reached the end of Final Fantasy IX. We will have one more episode next week. Look forward to that. If you want to vote on whether you want to see Expedition 33 or Xenoblade Chronicles next, hit up our Patreon. Also, if you want to interact with us during these streams and be a part of what we do here on the channel, look up those Patreon tiers and support how you can. We appreciate you for watching. We appreciate you for making it possible for us to do this. This show has become something I look forward to doing every week. I feel like I've become much closer to you as a friend through the show.
Me too.
I've learned some of the most important lessons in my life through doing this. And so I have you to thank. Those of you who watch, those of you who contribute for making that possible. I really, really deeply appreciate you. And we will see you again next week.